And we're live. Hello, hello. Apologies, we're starting a few minutes late today. Looks like it's working now. We had a little bit of a momentary glitch getting up and running. If you're seeing this on Blue Sky, yeah, it says Elon Take the Wheel live stream Bagnarok. That's not what's happening today. That was the last stream we did here. It's been a couple weeks. I'm a little bit out of practice. But that's why we're here doing this. And I'm excited for a great stream around a classic content genre. Some of you are familiar with this. Some of you are way too familiar with this content genre. Others of you, perhaps, there's still a little novelty left. But I'm referring, of course, to the infamous Tesla quarterly earnings call. This is something that's been going on for a while now. Tesla's been a public company for a while now. And so there's a lot of lore, a lot of heritage around this. And nobody knows this genre better than my first guest, who I'm very thrilled to have here today, Montana Skeptic.
Welcome. How are you, Ed?
Welcome to the Elon Take the Wheel live stream.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you back here. Maybe less fantastic to have to sit through another Tesla earnings call. I think both of us once upon a time believed or at least hoped that we would not in 2026 still be having to do this, but here we are. We'll make the best of it.
It's amazing. In this age of amazing abundance, right? You saw the quarterly report.
I did see that. There's graphics. There's all kinds of cool stuff. So before we get into the call, obviously, we'll let you know when that happens. We're going to get into the earnings report itself, but really quick, not everybody is going to be familiar with who Montana Skeptic is, who's tuning into this stream. So why don't we just take a couple moments for you to introduce yourself?
So my real name is Lawrence Fossi. I wrote its Seeking Alpha for a time about Tesla, really focused on its financials, on its contracts, on its subsidy scams, on its deals with New York State, et cetera, its safety. Elon Musk then one day got very annoyed with me, called my boss and told him that I was a big problem and he was going to have to sue me and he was going to have to drag my boss in with him. And so I sort of became an unexpected celebrity in a very niche way.
Well, you quit your job. I mean, like there are people who I know have been threatened or they had their bosses threatened Elon and chose not to, chose to shut up. And you are famous, rightly, for not just shutting up.
Yeah, I'm glad about that. And I was really happy to help. I don't know if you remember Randy Pothy, Skabushka, right?
Yes.
Who became who had an injunction filed against him by Tesla, a really outrageous effort to shut him up. And I helped him in court and we finally prevailed. And so I followed the story since. So here we are.
Yeah. So an absolute legend. I mean, it's fascinating how much has changed around Elon Musk skepticism and Tesla skepticism since 2018, which is when a lot of the events that you just described happened. It's kind of amazing how long ago 2018 was at this point. Yeah. But here we are, and another quarter. So I'm pulling up the earnings report right now. Do you have any sort of high-level thoughts before we jump into this?
I just want to offer Tesla. I have an idea for how they can quickly make $300 million of profit, Ed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I think it's really, I hope they don't blow it. Can't conceive of why they would. They bought SpaceX stock with a $2 billion investment, and I think their basis is $105 a share. So if they were to unload that today, even though they've lost a lot of opportunity for profit, they'd collect about $300 million. So I'm sure that the board, with its fiduciary duty, will be doing that so that, because, there's all these other lockups expiring, and I'm afraid they're going to go even below their own $105 basis soon. So there you go, $300 million, and don't say I never did anything for you.
All right. Well, with that, let's get into the actual numbers. It's kind of an interesting situation, right? So here's the summary. And the car business itself, in terms of volume at least, continues to be doing, I think it's more resilient, let's say, than I'd kind of thought or assumed, right? And we already had the delivery numbers and the production numbers. So I don't know, what do you think? I mean, did you sort of it looked like the volume numbers were going to sort of drop off on this thing, and they've kind of stuck it out pretty well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they flatlined. If you look at the bar charts later on, at like page 23, et cetera, you'll see everything is flattened out. The profits have flattened out. The cash flow is flattened out. Everything is flattened out. Their gross profit is lower than it's been in a long time. It's only 16.8%. That's a number that, because, you can achieve more volume by cutting prices, by offering discounts, by having all kinds of things that you do that cut into your gross margin. So I think we're seeing some of that happen. But as we know, Ed, if Tesla were trading at, I don't know, $20 a share, these might be really interesting to evaluate those numbers carefully. It's trading at what, $365 post earnings release, $365, $370 a share. That's a PE ratio of, I don't know, 285. And it is priced for robo-taxis making money with a business model that makes money. I mean, Waymo can do robo-taxis and lose money.
Right.
Can Tesla do robo-taxis at all? And if so, can it make money? And then Optimus, there's a couple of hilarious pictures of the Fremont factory and people with Optimus. There's no Optimus robots to be seen anywhere there.
Right.
And
except for in the capex, right? You're seeing the impact of what they're trying to accomplish with that. It's showing up in cost, but it's not showing up in revenue at all, or in a useful device, say, of some kind.
I don't know where all that capex is going. Is some of it going to artificial intelligence? If so, is that really kind of helping out SpaceX more than Tesla? I didn't see a lot of transparency here. I haven't studied it carefully about exactly where the capex is going. Maybe you saw something. But.
No, it's a fantastic point. I'm going to stop really quick because we have another guest here from TechCrunch, ace journalist and notorious thing rememberer, Sean O'Kane. Sean, welcome to the live stream.
I'm going to add that to my byline. Thing remember is pretty great.
Yeah, it's a more rare skill than you might think in this day.
There's a great
these days, yeah.
Thing Explainer by Randall Munro, where he uses only 1,000 words to explain the entire history of physics and biology and geology. So
I love that.
It's a good word.
It comes in handy on days like this.
Yeah.
So Sean, we're just kind of looking at the numbers right now. You've already done a write-up, so you've probably already looked at this with some more detail than certainly I have been able to yet. Why don't you tell us sort of what your headlines are?
Well, I mean, our big thing, and the first thing I noticed is all of a sudden the language. I'm always looking as how these things compare to prior earnings prints, and in particular the language they use in the letters. And it just really stood out to me that all of a sudden they weren't claiming volume production anymore for a number of things that are supposed to be coming. They're no longer claiming volume production for Semi this year or Cybercab this year, both of which seem related to the 4680 cell and their struggles to mass produce that at a level that they need. And then also Megapack 3 is no longer supposed to hit volume production this year. So I know you guys were just talking about CapEx. There's all this CapEx coming in and being spent, but it certainly isn't materializing in anything happening on schedule. Which no big surprise here, considering the company that we are talking about. But I think those are important, and especially when you think in context of the Cybercab stuff, we've seen them sort of staging a bunch of these things around the country in parking lots, etc. And they made some noise about starting production of Cybercab, and I think a lot of people were getting, believers were getting really excited about what that could mean for this year. And I think there's, the fact that they're no longer talking about volume production this year for Cybercab, in addition to the fact that they're not even getting out over their skis and promising new cities like they kind of had been a year ago of covering half the United States or whatever. Means that we are going to see. I do not think there is some rabbit that was going to be pulled out of the hat today of any longer of all of a sudden we'll flip on 20 more cities, et cetera, et cetera. It certainly looks like Cybercab is going to be a lot more limited. And one more point, and then I'll hand it back to you. I think it's important to, if I'm going to be the thing rememberer, it's important to remember that we see now Tesla doing major discounts and doing everything they can to move metal when they had a $25,000 or so vehicle in development, being championed by people like Franz and some of the other executives who even kept that project alive in secret, according to Walter Isaacson's book. And Musk killed it in favor of only going Cybercab on this next generation platform. And so like they could have had something more affordable that could have been moving metal for them without them having to discount all their other models. And yet here we are. So.
Or bank everything on this list here, and I'll draw your eye to ramping unsupervised. We're all ramping unsupervised, man. It's an easy thing to say. Lots to unpack there, Sean. I gotta take a moment though to welcome yet another guest, actually your boss, to the stream, and my Autonocast co-host Kirsten Korosec. Kirsten, welcome. We have a full house. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Ed. I was waiting in the wings, listening to Sean and talk about the story we wrote today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Sean's had his chance to wait. Let's hear your high level take right now.
Sean, I think is really good at like looking for the new changes in a shareholder letter, and for those who might poo-poo that, would say this, like you have to understand that in all these SEC filings, this is not something that is tweeted out or just said randomly on a call. This is reviewed by law. Those word changes matter. And as Sean and I were talking prior to, as we were writing the story, it was a pretty big boast. And so to remove that is notable, and which is why, we kind of focused on that. The other thing is that, there is, I'm sure, focus on, and our story reflects that, which is this uptick in revenue on automotive and even energy storage and a quote, ramping up of FSD supervised. But if you look at the markets in which they had record sales, it was not the US. It was other countries that also were offering a lot of incentives. And incentives have power, and it was helping drive that. So, you can't look at the numbers, you have to kind of see where this is happening. And then also Sean's eagle eye spotted the fact that they've put back in automotive margins. They did not have that. And I think the last quarters. So that's another kind of interesting line that some analysts think are saying are a bit of a red flag. This isn't just an uptick in revenue. There's also margins are being squeezed.
Yeah, so that's such a good point. So in the car business, when you see, and I love this disclosure because they're talking about their, so in all of these things, right? You talk about what's going best, right? And you mention what's going not well as little as you possibly can. Their automotive blurb here, and I just realized I stopped sharing it because I have something else I want to share in just a sec, so I'll just read it. Under automotive, it says, our overall Q2 record deliveries were supported by record deliveries in several markets, including South Korea, Australia, Colombia, Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, Portugal, the Philippines, Chile, Slovenia, and Lithuania. Like, I'm trying to think, what's the equivalent?
Back on Slovenia. I've got my last name. I'm Slovenian last name here. So
these are not powerhouse automotive markets. For those who don't follow the industry, I know this may be hard to believe. These are not like the places that you really, really want to be doing super well. And these are the places where when demand isn't doing elsewhere, you take, those cars that are getting pumped out by Shanghai Gigafactory, which they kind of have to keep running no matter what because of their tax agreement with the locals there. And then you got to send them somewhere. And when you see this, what you read is demand is weak in the US, demand is weak in China, demand is weak in Europe. Those are the big three EV markets. There's a couple of these countries are technically in Europe, Portugal. But
Slovenia is part of the EU.
Slovenia, yeah. But again, you're talking about Portugal and Slovenia, in your this is how well things are going. So really good point to talk about how they're sort of bundling a bunch of weak markets together in order to get these results.
What has ever gone wrong by generating revenue in far cast locales, right? Like that's not anything that contributed to the downfall of companies like Wirecard or anything.
I love it.
I have a question for Sean and Kirsten, who evidently studied this language carefully. Right at the outset, Tesla talks about its core businesses, which it talks about as vehicle, energy and services, I think. And then everything else is an initiative. AI is an initiative. Manufacturing, which I guess means Optimus, is an initiative. And, given what Kirsten said about how these are actually reviewed by lawyers and are, potentially actionable under fraud rules, it's interesting that suddenly we were told that this was an AI, and robotaxi company and Optimus, and those are now just initiatives. And the core business, we're back to an automotive company, basically, and an energy company.
Yeah, actually, I actually am going to give them, okay, when I say I'm going to give them this, maybe they were forced to do this, but I do think that there is a key difference between what is put out on X and what SEC filings. And the difference is that core products generate revenue. Initiatives are not even at volume production or even have started production yet. And I think it's an important delineation. So I'm glad that it's in there. I went back and looked at coverage we did about a year ago. And this quarter last year, Elon Musk and Tesla called this a seminal quarter. And I put this in and it was the beginning of this like big transition to this AI robotics company. We're a year in. And that transition is still very much in the earlier stages, I would say, because, there's no production of anything yet. It's not as if a product has been launched. So I think it's important that they called an initiative. To call it a product would be super irresponsible and wrong.
Well, let's also remember. Yeah, let's also remember a year ago, since we're doing thing remembering here on this stream. A year ago, it was a very important pivot that Elon suddenly started saying on, I think it was the Q2 call last year, Q2 or Q3, that he said by a year from now, so this summer now, that the revenue from the robotaxis would start to be material. That was critical because for 10 years, he's been doing this self-driving come on. And one of the things that's allowed that to go on for such an impossible, there's a lot of that. I read a whole book about all the different things that are sort of contributing to his ability to keep that going for 10 years. But one of the critical ones is defining what success looks like on a quarter to quarter, month to month, year to year basis. And it'll be like feature complete was one of the early ones. And he keeps coming up with these things of like, this is what we're going to deliver in order to show progress on this thing. And so a year ago, I was like, oh, this is a big deal. He's saying, right. And like feature complete can mean anything. Like a lot of times these things are engineered to be like, it can be whatever. When you say revenue from robotaxi will be material a year from now, you're saying something specific and measurable and accountability holdable. Boy, I'm really the language is really on point today. Yeah. And so that hasn't happened as well. And so I just want to share these charts really quick as well. These come from George Perks, who was on the last stream I did. I don't think he's gonna be able to make it today, but he did share these charts with us that show that, when you talk about Tesla as a business, which it is, you're still talking about the car business. And as we've sort of been discussing, the profitability is just trending the wrong way. So these two charts that he shared, this is automotive gross margin X regulatory credits. So this is like, a pretty solid metric. As you can see, there had been some improvement, although it's been sort of largely flat, trending back downwards now. And then this is adjusted return on common equity X regulatory credit revenue. I'm a little less familiar with this metric, but here you can see, it's not good. So, and this is the moment that Tesla's in, right? Is that the core business is not getting the investment, is not getting product, or the product that it's gotten has not been good product, right? It's been the Cybertruck. And that's what the actual business is. Then there's all this narrative, but like we're continuing to see like a total inability to get any traction on that, other than on, as we were discussing, the cost side, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the cost side has been, to be fair, the CFO did predict that there were going to be a negative free cash flow the rest of this year. And in fact, that has, in this era of AI, we're judging companies how much money they're spending, sometimes in a positive and sometimes negative, meaning, the more you spend, therefore you will be more innovative and be ahead. So, like just today, I think Alphabet just increased their spend to something like $205 billion. Tesla's CapEx is supposed to be $25 billion for the I don't know if it depends on how the rest of the next quarters go, but I would anticipate them spending even more money in the next 2 quarters if they want to hit that 25 billion.
Can I just say, it's just objectively funny that they started including the automotive gross revenue line in there. Like, that was something they took out years ago, and we all had to sort of calculate it or wait for the analysts to figure it out to get that figure every time they would drop an earnings release. And so it's funny to me that they're putting that back in there now, especially with the sort of sub line item that goes underneath it of automotive gross margin less regulatory credits, because this was the lowest regulatory credit sale quarter they've had since 2019. So like the difference between those two numbers is almost meaningless now, and presumably will be going forward. So it's like, okay, thanks for like hiding that number from us for 5 years or however long it was, and bringing it back only when it actually, almost doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of games like this. So YouTube, while we have you, and just to note, I checked in the live cast. We're technically 5 minutes out from when the webcast should start. As all of the veterans on this panel know, the chances of actually making that start time are basically zero. So we'll see how much time we get to chat. Before we switch to that though, before that starts, I wanted to ask you both, do you guys have any clue where this CapEx is going? Because Larry and I were talking a little bit earlier on the stream, and it's not super clear, right? So I have that on here, right? So like
where the spend is?
Yeah. So like supercharger spend is happening, I guess, in theory, certain things, but they're not translating to anything really like measurable on the business side.
Well, Sean, did you want to?
I mean, there's just a ton of compute being built in Texas, right? Like, right. I assume a lot of the money is going there. Yeah. They're talking about sort of like, doubling the megawatts that they have. I mean, they even changed, you got that screen up now, the sort of way that they're describing that capacity this quarter is completely different from how they were describing it last quarter. Last quarter, they were listing out how many like H100, I don't even know what chip it is, but they were listing out the actual number of chips that they were using in Cortex 1 and 2. Now they're doing it by power. And so it's like, it's genuinely hard to tell with so much of that changing here.
I mean, to just drill down, CapEx can be like buying machinery, or it's like hard assets, right? So buying machinery or equipment, or buying land. It can be even buying vehicles. So, I think that they're expanding, are going through the Fremont change up over there with trying to bring Optimus online, and there certainly will be some buying machine equipment on that end, is my educated guess. I think that that's probably happening for Cybercab as well. But I do think that there's going to be the compute angle as well. If that qualifies as a hard asset or infrastructure, which I think it does.
So just not to cut you off, but this chart here is curious. There's so much about this disclosure that's so bad. And one of them is that it's literally very difficult to tell if this line, the straight up line in capacity in AI compute capacity or AI training capacity, is that happening in Q1 or Q2? It looks like it may be happening in Q2. If it happened in Q2, then that explains, I think, probably a lot of this expenditure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the way they put it in there, it's like very difficult to tell if it's actually happening in Q1 or Q2. And this also raises the question, right? Because in Q1 we had the SpaceX Tesla agreement, memorandum of strategic. I'm not sure what exactly the right way to describe it is, but like so and Lawrence mentioned earlier, like so if that's what Tesla's spending money on is a huge amount of new training compute, is that essentially a subsidy to SpaceX?
Maybe. I'm glad you brought up SpaceX, because I did want to read, and I'm just looking at my other monitor right now. This came in from a senior analyst over at investing.com, and I haven't looked into this, so that's a big caveat, but this analyst said that roughly 22 cents in GAAP EPS, so earnings, came from an unrealized $1 billion gain on Tesla's recently acquired SpaceX stake, and suggested that once you strip that out,
Interesting.
that shows that, you know, on paper it might be looking better than it's materially weaker. I haven't looked at it, but it is something that I wanted to flag before I open up the call. I think that noting that, to me, what I'm wondering, and there's been a lot of speculation, not if, but when SpaceX and Tesla merge, then the financials are more interesting, especially how they report them. Chaos is one way we can describe it.
And you were talking about accountability before about some of these promises, Ed. I mean, speaking of SpaceX, I maintain that the number one reason that not only will they merge, but SpaceX will sort of absorb Tesla is because then we wind up with Tesla benefiting from the governance that SpaceX has created in Texas, which is essentially a regime that can't be touched. You know, you have to own 3% of that company's stock in order to be able to file any kind of like real securities derivative suit, and just, you know, it's not doable. And so like that just seems to me like the most obvious reason why we're headed down that path, setting aside all the other reasons.
Very quickly, Kirsten, I know you haven't analyzed that claim. A guy named Motorhead had done an analysis saying that Tesla had about a $1.25 billion gain on its, you know, obviously unrealized gain on its investment in SpaceX. And before you and Sean came live, I told Ed I had a way for Tesla to go ahead and realize $300 million of profit right now. Sell your SpaceX stock, which your basis is $105 a share, before all these unlocks keep happening and you're underwater. So if they took it into profit this quarter, they're going to have to, you know, continue to do that with any profit or loss, which I think is more probable as all these unlocks happen in SpaceX ahead. But I haven't seen the underlying data on what's incled in
FSD. And in fact,
sorry, I hate to cut you off for our friend, but the call has started. Yeah, Kirsten and Sean, if you guys have to go, I get it. Thanks for coming on.
They're coming into our stores
Bye, ciao.
in the US and saying they want the full self-driving and with whatever car it comes with, essentially. So clearly this is a significant demand driver, and as we get approval for FSD in different countries, I think we'll see a similar uptick in demand.
Yeah, I saw that they had almost 1.5 million subscriptions.
The energy business is also growing incredibly fast, and I think will be crucial for the scale up of artificial intelligence data centers. We're investing a lot in growing the core business and really preparing for the future. So this is a massive CapEx year, but I'm confident that all the things that we're investing in will yield incredible returns. Really, maybe the best CapEx returns that we've ever seen.
Oh, okay.
And just the Tesla team has performed incredibly well.
Patience.
The Cybercab has started production, and we also have started production and are ramping in. We will soon start production with Optimus. We have started production with the Tesla semi-truck. We will soon start production with Megapack 3. We've started production with the lithium refinery, the cathode refinery. We're scaling up battery cell production, and we're also preparing to do a massive solar panel, like solar cells and panel production. Actually, this is going all the way from silicon refinement to producing the solar cell and then deployment of solar, because there's going to be tremendous need for electricity in the future due to electrification of transport and AI, obviously. So we're working on what we believe is the most ambitious build-out of advanced infrastructure and manufacturing capacity ever in history.
Yeah.
It's big.
In order to get the best returns ever in our CapEx ever in history.
How do you measure CapEx?
Our goals are very ambitious for Robotaxi, but we do need to be cautious about.
I'm going to introduce him to railroads.
Causing any accidents or causing any harm to anyone. Although there are, I think, 30 to 40,000 automotive deaths per year in the United States
promising.
alone,
We don't
most
want to hurt
roles don't
anyone,
generate
but
any press when they,
bars
they're-
30, 40.
you never really read about almost any of those. But if we injure even one person, it will be worldwide headline news. And regulators will immediately clamp down on our
As
activities.
the author of a book on this.
And we don't want to injure anyone. So we're going as fast as humanly possible in scaling robotaxi, but while trying to ensure that we do not harm anyone at all.
Anyone at all.
And ideally do not even run over a pet. So
more than 60
that's
people
what
have died
we're
using
trying to do.
Tesla's driving automation
We're-
systems that we know about
we
just
wanna go
from
as fast
government
as
data
possible
from
with
the last,
robotaxi
5
without-
years.
harm to anyone.
And by the way, when Elon
we're
says like
providing
stuff like that, you
live
know it's
updates
because there's
for
probably
robotaxi
something
launch
that's
as we
happened that we don't know
open
about
up in
yet.
the city. We immediately post that on X. So if you just follow the Tesla account on X, we'll keep you informed as we
Little
scale
self-dealing
to
there.
new cities. We've opened up in a number of cities in Florida and in Texas, and obviously in the Bay Area. So we'll continue to scale, I think, very, very rapidly.
Everybody's eager to know because we all want a 28-minute wait time. 15
Yeah.
It looks like more than 10% a week in terms of miles driven.
More than 10% a week in terms
It's
of miles
very,
driven.
very high.
Is that unsupervised though? Because if so,
So,
that the
let's see,
base is very
Optimus,
small that they're starting from. Like we don't know what their actual base is,
as
but we
you've
know it's
heard me say
the
before, I
fleet's
think
like
Optimus will be the biggest
cars
product
in
ever.
Austin.
But it is a very complex problem to solve. It's one of the hardest things to solve, to make an autonomous humanoid robot that can do tasks that if you simply ask it to do something or show it a video, it can do the task without any programming. Like no one's.
It's
no one's
helpful to
ever
think
achieved this.
of Tesla as a
And you've got-
program
there
through
are
which
many
Elon Musk
challenges
gets very wealthy, learning
in
that hard
the
things are hard.
electromechanical design of the robot.
You show it a video of
to
a
achieve
Tesla
sufficient
driving from
dexterity
LA to New York, and it'll drive from
and
LA.
rely. It needs to be very reliable.
He's not wrong. It's hard.
have
It's almost it's even harder than
a
the
long
thing he's
wear-
been trying to
long
deliver
wear
for
and
10
tear,
years
meaning
and hasn't been
it
able
needs
to
to be
yet.
out in the field and not break down. Otherwise, you've got sort of a 70-kilogram robot that just flopped over, and you got to
God.
carry it like
This
carry it
is-
out like a buddy. It's
How-
on wheels.
I want to send Elon a copy of
And we
this
don't want
book.
Optimus to go haywire.
What to expect when you're
So,
expecting robots.
um,
Could have covered this years ago. Fantastic book, by the way.
It's
Highly
it's
recommend it to
it's a lot of
everyone.
work to scale to get the design right and to scale production. And I really want to emphasize here that the production scaling challenge is a very substantial. This is going to be the hardest product to scale manufacturing that we've ever made at Tesla, because everything on the robot is new, and the difficulty of scaling the production ramp is proportionate to the newness of the parts.
The implication
robot.
here that they were
It's-
using
and,
other automakers and suppliers'
you know,
parts
we just
bins
did
and
electric cars.
expertise
The
is nice.
non-electric
It's a nice,
powertrain
you know,
portions of the
decade
parts
late
had an existing supply
admission
chain.
that, like, in fact,
So
Tesla
you could
piggybacked on a
go
lot
to
of existing
existing
automotive
suppliers for
expertise.
Yeah.
wheels
They
and
can't
side
do
mirrors
now.
and windshield
The dogs are
glass
not,
and that kind
not
of
buying
thing.
the
body
dog
panels.
food. He's sending
And
Tesla stock further
with
down
Optimus,
post
there
market.
is no supply chain.
Comments about
So we've had to build up a supply chain in its entirety, or in-house the production. And we actually in-house a tremendous amount. The Optimus production line that we're building out in Fremont, in place of what used to be the Model SX production, it looks incredible. I mean, it's
If people
quite
take
stunning
one
to see.
thing from a decade of Tesla history, it's that you don't
so I
start
just wanna
building
be-
things until
make
you've
sure
until you've
to target
developed them.
people
The
correctly.
idea that you don't have a complete
Optimus
product,
will
but you're
follow
working on
the
production
sort of
capacity,
normal
it's just like
S-curve of
this is how you know
manufacturing,
guys on
of the
series.
manufacturing ramp.
One
But the
of-
initial portion of the X curve will be quite flat and long
Mm.
because of the newness of the parts in the robot.
it's going to be years and years, is what he's saying. And the
Yeah,
idea that
So,
even if
Um,
Elon Musk, with people
Yeah,
fleeing from him
obviously
all the
not.
time in his corporate headquarters, could come up with a robot, Ed, they're going to be so far away from the industry leader. It's just a terrible joke. This Optimus thing, who buys this? Who believes this?
it's
Are there
pretty
people who
incredible.
believe this?
I don't know because you have companies doing like teleop and stuff, and even that, teleoperated robot where you actually have a human on the other side, and even that's not useful. Like the idea that Okay.
full human dexterity. So
Full
a
human
hand that has the same level of dexterity, if not higher, than a human hand. And the human hand is an incredible thing. The more you study the human hand, the more amazing you realize how amazing hands are. It's more than just opposable thumbs. I mean,
This is an amazing
the nuances
insight.
of how human hands work are
Completely novel.
amazing. As
Yeah, it's not like decades of
the
PhDs
closer
haven't
you
been
look, the
working
more
on
amazed you
this,
are.
you know.
Opposable.
And Optimus will have that capability. It'll have human and then superhuman dexterity.
Superhuman dexterity.
So it's really going to be quite something. Let's see, Terafab. The Terafab, we expect to announce the location soon and provide more details about our plans in that regard, which we'll leave that to the product, sort of the launch announcement, rather than try to squeeze it into an earnings call, because I think this is a very big announcement, and it deserves to have its own sort of day in the spotlight and not be sort of.
Am I wrong that
an earnings
solar
call.
manufacturing is
I
like
do think Terafab is going to be
businesses around?
an
I
amazing
believe it's
initiative.
very, very tough.
And necessary
Here we
one.
heard so much about Terafab,
one without which
and now we're not going to talk about it on this
constrained in our
call.
ability
Yeah.
to scale Optimus
Yeah,
If
production.
it ever
We
happens.
simply won't have.
Yeah.
enough
At the
AI.
point that China is using, slave labor in
it's,
Xinjiang,
it's crucial to
allegedly
solve that, and
for a lot of that solar
have to solve
manufacturing. Like I wouldn't want to have to compete with that
memory,
in
logic,
Texas or wherever, right?
and packaging in order to scale Optimus. So, but anyway, like I said, we'll leave that to its own announcement. We've placed equipment orders for our development fab in Austin. And
That's probably where a lot of that capital's going.
That development fab, I think, is pretty cool because it's intended to have lithography mask production, and then logic, memory, and packaging and chip testing all under one roof. So you can have a very fast iterative cycle and try out new chip designs very quickly and see if they work. I don't think such a building exists anywhere on Earth. So this is really going to be super helpful as we.
There's no such thing as a chip company. No one had that idea before. A company that develops and makes chips.
High payoff bets on AI chips.
What will they think of next?
It focused, like I said, on primarily on Optimus. Like, how do we make Optimus as useful as possible?
And that's a hardware problem.
We have like
compute hardware problem.
Optimus, which
compute
is
hardware seems like the easiest part of that problem, like hands down.
Driving a computer screen. I guess you could call it computer use or something like that. But driving a computer screen in the same way that you drive a car. So for the car, it's sort of pixels in or photons in and controls out. The same thing is true for Optimus and digital Optimus. It's photons in, controls out. So we feel confident we can adapt the same Tesla AI technology that we developed for self-driving cars.
The thing that's not working for self-driving cars after 10 years is definitely going to work for an even harder problem. Yeah, for sure, bro.
So the self-driving 100%. Computer, where the Tesla, the very, very low cost Tesla AI4 computer can handle all of the sort of short-term tasks. They're doing real-time video control of the screen of the computer. So it's not like screenshots type of thing. It's real-time video.
Wait, they have the Optimus operating a computer? Like in the era of agents? Why would you have this? Is like I remember in the old days of self-driving cars, there was like some startup that had like a little mechanical robot that you would like put in the driver's seat to drive the car. What are you doing?
Computer use capability. So that's looking promising. Then this is in partnership with SpaceX's Grok, so the big model that is kind of like the manager of Digital Optimus, and kind of tells Digital Optimus what to do, provides it with a series of tasks, and then Digital Optimus goes and does those tasks.
Okay, so he's not talking about hardware. He's talking about a digital model of the hardware that doesn't exist. Like I'm so confused.
I'm lost.
Right
also building out.
Sounds like it's SpaceX turtles all the way down. To be honest,
the guy can't keep his companies separate. Like he doesn't know which company is doing which. Like
with x86, so pairing an x86 computer with the Tesla AI4 computer in a box. And it's got this digital Optimus in a box. And in a megapod, kind of like the Megapack packaging. And so where we put just a large number of AI4 plus x86 combos in.
Am I having a stroke right now? Is this real?
And that these boxes can be placed anywhere in the country or outside the country.
So this is like Tesla pivoting from cars to stationary
scale
storage.
AI compute using
it's like
electricity production. So because there's lots of places
my
around the world,
contention has
including
been
superchargers.
For a while, Ed, that
I think we've got
everything
like
Tesla's
7
doing,
gigawatts.
it's really essentially for SpaceX, and does he usually go on this long?
It's been shorter the last couple of calls. This is a little bit longer, but he's also very low energy
for AI.
Very low.
I think that could be quite a big deal. So
putting processors in a box is not a big deal. Nobody. This is a joke from the show Silicon Valley. The box. I don't know if you remember that whole arc in that show.
Like I said, hard to squeeze into an earnings call, but we'll have a lot of product announcements, and this is going to be a great year for Tesla. I think one of our best years ever, and then I think next year will be even better. So, in conclusion, I want to thank the Tesla team for their excellent execution, and all of our supporters for joining us in this journey. Thank you.
I'm
great. Thanks so much, Elon. And now Vaibhav has some opening remarks.
Thanks, Travis. So Q2 continued the trend that we saw at the end of Q1, a resurgence in demand for vehicles across the globe. We achieved record Q2 deliveries globally with sequential growth across the Americas, APAC, and EMEA of 60%, 27%, and 12% respectively. Additionally, Model Y set records in several key markets, including the Netherlands, Australia, and New Zealand. The efforts of the Tesla team to create compelling products at a reasonable price with the capability of autonomous driving are coming to fruition. We exited Q2 with our largest order backlog since 2023. We are therefore focused on increasing production at all our factories to meet this growing demand. Production growth will be limited by our supply chain. This includes not just batteries, but also electronic components. We've been here before, and like always, our Tesla team is working actively to unblock the obstacles ahead by securing strategic deals with suppliers. Like Elon mentioned, one of the key factors for vehicle demand has been FSD. Our sales data suggests one of the main reasons customers are coming and looking at the car is because of FSD.
Yeah, just really quick, I just added up their automotive capacity that they over 2.2 or over 2.1 million units of global capacity. Over all of these are over, and that's not counting Cybertruck or Cybercab. The idea that anyway,
did we lose him?
No, that was my fault.
Reaching nearly 1.5 million paid customers globally.
Yeah,
of which 55% is upfront purchases.
That's shocking. 1.5 million FSD subscribers after 10 years.
We expect that the bulk of the growth
truly
in FSD monetization will come from subscriptions, as we've removed the purchase option in most markets. Automotive margins, excluding regulatory credits, declined sequentially from 19.2% to 16.3%. As a reminder, we had highlighted in Q1 that we had a $230 million benefit from warranty true-downs and some tariff relief, which did not repeat in Q2. Controlling for the impact of those benefits from the prior quarter, our automotive gross margins, excluding credits, would have been approximately flat. This demonstrates the effective pricing and cost management done by the Tesla team as we continue to drive demand. Commodity price increases and interest rate changes all continue to add to our costs. Note that interest rate subvention costs are recognized upfront as revenue offset. So as interest rates have risen this year, the cost of subvention has risen along with them, which had a negative impact on automotive margins. As we have previously noted, energy business is inherently lumpy. Deployments are tied to customer timelines and largely out of our control. In Q2, we deployed 13.5 gigawatt hour of energy storage, a 53% sequential increase, and the second largest quarter for energy business. Despite this growth, energy gross margins declined from 39.5% to 20.4%. This margin decline was a result of several dynamics. First, there was a warranty true-up in the quarter of about $240 million related to certain vendor cell issues for our legacy deployments. Also, the tariff benefits we recognized in Q1 of more than $200
I want to know
million
more about that.
did not repeat. And lastly, we had previously guided that ASPs for industrial storage is coming down amidst growing competition.
Yeah, it's
Long
shocking.
term,
It's
we
shocking
believe
that
the energy
stationary margins
business
are as
should
high as they're
normalize
saying they
at a
are.
gross margin rate
I,
in the
I
mid to low
that's amazing.
20% range.
It's got to be
Our
people
order
who are like,
backlog
I need
of
a
this
Tesla.
business
Boss says
is
he wants a
robust,
Tesla system or
and we are
something like
doing
that.
our
There's no
best
way
to
that,
build
that those
based on
margins are
both
really
existing demand
across
and
the
future
industry.
demand we expect from data center growth and overall electrification of the economy. Service and other margins improved sequentially from 9.2% to 14.1%, an all-time high. This was mainly driven by an uptick in volume and better cost management of our vehicle fleet that supports businesses such as used car, supercharging, service centers, and insurance. While marginal today, also included in this business are deliberate investments we are making in infrastructure that will help scale robotaxi in the future. We continue to grow the Tesla robotaxi fleet and have expanded to a total of 7 markets in the US. We expect the ramp of the fleet to accelerate throughout the year, along with expansion into new US markets. As previously guided, operating expenses increased sequentially. The increase came primarily from significant research and development related activities, including pre-production ramp costs for new products like the semi-truck, Optimus, Cybercab, and other AI initiatives, as well as depreciation for an additional compute that we brought online. Additionally, we had charges related to litigation expenses in the quarter. Note that
Get his
we
ass.
are in a big investment cycle and expect our operating expenses, largely driven by R&D, to continue to grow in 2026 and beyond.
But that doesn't make sense if
Net income
it's
was
for
positively
stuff that's going to be
impacted by a
produced. If it's for
mark-to-market gain
Cybercab
of
and
$1 billion on our
and the
SpaceX
semi and
holdings,
stuff, like
which was
that's got to start
offset
turning into
by
revenue at some
losses
point,
on
right?
FX of
I
approximately
think they're
$300
telling you the
million
revenues are a
and
long
on
way down the
Bitcoin
road.
of
A long way
Yeah.
down the road.
about 100 million.
Which doesn't make sense. Like you,
As
it
previously
shouldn't take that
guided,
long to. I
our
mean, they've
free
been talking
cash
about
flow ended up
the
being
semi ramp
negative for the quarter.
forever.
Most of the reason for it going negative is because CapEx more than doubled sequentially, and we expect it to increase further in the second half of 2026. We continue to expect that CapEx for this year will be more than $25 billion. CapEx will grow for the next 2 or 3 years as we expand our robotaxi fleet, expand our production capacity for Optimus,
And as we
make
cover costs
investments
for
for
SpaceX
semiconductor
to make
fab,
their economics look better.
install solar
wait.
manufacturing capacity,
The
and AI
robotaxi
compute
fleet
infrastructure,
cannot be.
in
It's
addition
just
to
not that
all the
much
other
money to
expansions
build
we'll
a
do
No.
for auto
I saw their
manufacturing for
operation in
automakers.
Austin in some. I mean, a year ago, but
In addition to using
there's no
our
depot. It's just
cash
a
for
lot with
such
a fence around
investments,
it and a
we are
couple
being
security cameras. Like there's
opportunistic
no
in
there's no
securing
capex.
certain debt facilities
They're using in
that will
Chicago,
give
other
us
places.
the
They're using their
capacity to
existing
borrow up to $20 billion to help
service centers and
accelerate such
stuff.
investments.
There's no capex.
We believe this is the right strategy to position the company for the next era.
Let's see if
And
the
we'll
natives are
always
going to
make
start to
such
get
investments
restless
in a
here.
very capital
Question.
efficient manner.
Well, so I'm curious to see
The
what
path to amazing
does
abundance
capex look like
is
at
ever challenging and
SpaceX
requires
when they
making
report
bold
earnings
bets.
tomorrow, or not tomorrow,
The
next week.
progress will
Like
be
because I think your
non-linear.
theory is a
The
sound
future
one.
is going to be great, and we are ready to rise to the occasion. I
Future's
would like
gonna
to
be
end
great.
by thanking the Tesla team, our customers, investors, and suppliers for their
Very underwhelming
faith in us on this journey.
quarterly report and underwhelming comments
so much,
by
Vaibhav.
both
Yeah,
of these guys.
As
very
everyone
low
on the call
energy,
may have
lowest
noticed,
energy call in a
we've
long
covered
time.
several of the say.com questions already in opening remarks, including
They've already
Optimus
censored
production,
some of the tough questions.
Terafab, and
Have
Digital
they?
Optimus.
Yeah, the big
Ashok is joining us
shareholders
today, our VP
submitted
of
questions
AI,
to put the
and
good
he's gonna
questions
cover
further
questions
down the
related to
queue.
Robotaxi. Ashok?
Thank you,
Which
Travis.
is funny because they started doing
Many
that in
of
the
the
first
questions
place
on
to avoid
Say.com
actual
relate
analyst
to
questions.
robotaxi deployment and
Remember
scaling.
Galley?
So we
moving
thought we'd
target.
provide a comprehensive view of where we are now and where we are going in the future. First of all, I'd like to state that the robotaxi program has been operating extremely well. Especially in terms of safety, the program has had an impeccable safety record. We have driven more than 380,000 miles of unsupervised robotaxi, now across 6 cities in 2 different states. We have had 0 notable incidents. Any
Notable
reports have
incidents
been
is a
of
made
other
up
actors
thing.
impacting us when we were stationary.
Waymo is
Again, I'd
currently
like to
logging
emphasize
20
how
million
safe the
miles
operation
per
has been
month.
so far. 0 notable incidents over
380,000 versus
380,000
20
miles.
million.
Historically, the so-called experts have always claimed that you need LiDARs, radars, HD maps, and the entire kitchen sink to drive safely. Here we show that such is not true.
No,
You can have
you're
safe,
using them. You're using
comfortable, and
LiDAR and you're
affordable
using
autonomy
HD
with just
maps.
cameras.
100%.
This record should be a huge validation of Tesla's entire AI approach. Second, I'd like to discuss scaling. We started the robotaxi program roughly a year ago in Austin. We had safety monitors in the passenger seats of the cars back then. Around the end of last year, we had the first fully unsupervised robotaxis in Austin. Since the beginning of this year, we have grown at double-digit growth rates to the number of unsupervised miles that the fleet drives every week. I repeat, we have grown at such a high compounding rate on a week-over-week basis over the last several months.
And you're still only at 380,000 miles a month.
Expect to continue growing at such a large rate through the rest of this year. The other thing to note is that for expanding to new cities, it has been relatively less effort on our front. We expect that the time to launch to a new city will continue to trend towards 0, towards an end where we operate in entire states as a whole instead of going by city by city.
By the way, those Florida cities that they've announced, they just made an announcement. There's
Such
no
growth
evidence of anyone
was only
actually getting
possible
any kind of
because
rides.
we
There's
have a
no
world-class
sign
engineering team at the
of what
Frontier
type of
AI
fleet
development
is,
here at Tesla.
what wait times are, nothing.
The currently operating robotaxi fleet is already running early versions of the V15 FSD software that we had referred to in the past. For V15, we had planned roughly about 7 major improvement tracks, and they're all happening in parallel. The early V15 builds that are running on robotaxi have already 40% of those tracks merged together, and that's what's running in the fleet right now. As we continue to complete our work on V15, we will see that the car is going to be ridiculously safe and capable. We're already seeing internal signs that all of these bets that we have made for technology improvements are all continuing to starting to work, and we expect that the payoff will be huge, and that's what is going to help us sustain the same growth rate through the rest of this year and so on. Finally, regarding the Cybercab, first of all, it's a phenomenal product. Anyone who rides in it instantly falls in love with the experience. We have aligned our manufacturing targets
because you
to
have to
roughly
be an
match the
influencer, a
projected growth
Tesla-friendly
rate of the
influencer to get access
unsupervised
to it.
miles.
Cybercab,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nobody.
Same V15 models
Employees.
that power the Model Y and other platforms will also work on Cybercabs. In conclusion, robotaxi growth so far has been literally exponential while keeping an impeccable safety record. Our technology bets are paying off, helping us sustain the exponential growth for the foreseeable future. And the Cybercab is going to be awesome.
By the way, in Q1,
That's great.
Musk
Thanks so
said
much,
that
Ashok.
unsupervised FSD
And there was one
would be
remaining
on consumer
question
vehicles
on
by
data collection
Q4.
for
They
Optimus
haven't
training.
even
Would you
mentioned
mind covering that as well?
this call.
Yep,
Nothing about actual customer.
Regarding
customer
Optimus,
unsupervised.
especially Gen 3, Optimus has been designed to not just match the appearance of human beings, but also the functionality and dexterity of humans. One of the main reasons for this approach is that having the human form factor and function allows us to learn from humans on how to perform a wide variety of tasks. This opens up the entire world to provide data for training Optimus. Just like FSD, we have access to a broad fleet of
I
humans
feel like
giving us
I'm
data
I'm hearing
from all
Todd
of the
Blanche
workers
talk
at our
about
factory.
Donald Trump or something.
Optimus can learn
Parallels
quite a
are
bit from
are
observing
incredible.
them perform their tasks at the factories.
The
We also
performances of
have
guys
a
talking in front of their
dedicated
bosses
data
these
collection
days is
team
really
who can provide
inspiring
relatively
stuff.
small amount, but of very high
Clear,
quality
Ed, that they're
demonstrations
never going to
to
stop
do the
lying about
post-training
safety. They will
of these
not
models.
stop lying about it.
Yeah,
This is
it's pretty shocking considering they have to report to the government.
We
We
can do
know
off
they
of the
had
entire internet
13 crashes just
of
last
data
year.
that shows
Out of like
demonstrations of people doing
that many
various
vehicles.
tasks, both in industrial settings and home settings. The second flywheel is when we have a large number of Optimus robots practicing their tasks in what we call the Optimus Academy. The data from the bots experiencing the tasks themselves will be invaluable and
There was
help us
Trump
close
University,
any
now
minor
there's
form
Optimus
factor gaps
Academy.
that may
Optimus
exist between the
Academy.
bot and the humans. This is also when the reinforcement learning loop kicks in, where the bot initially attempts some task, fails sometimes, learns from both the successes and failures of those tasks, and eventually learns to master those tasks at perhaps a superhuman level. Our AI strategy for Optimus is aligned with the same. It's the same end-to-end strategy that drives FSD, pixels in, controls out. And just like FSD, we expect it to work broadly. In FSD, you can get in the car, type in an address, and then
Crash
and
anywhere in the
kind of
world.
all of driving from park to park. And the same thing is going to be true for Optimus as well. You're going to just ask it to do anything, and then it should just perform the entire task on its own without you having to do anything along the way.
Yeah.
And it's the
Until
same thing
it
that
fails.
produced FSD, the V12, 13, 14, and
That's
now
not your
V15 software that now works on Optimus as well. And so I'm very confident that Optimus will be an extremely capable robot.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashok. So that covers the say.com questions.
Wow.
Now we will,
they
we
are
will move over
really,
to analyst questions.
really cutting
First
down.
question comes from Tom from RBC. Tom, please feel free to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Let's hope the analysts get a little feistier. I felt like there were last
Tom,
couple
you're
calls.
still on mute, so
been
please
a few
unmute
signs of
yourself
life.
and
They
go ahead
all
and ask your
just
question.
they were all just participating in the SpaceX IPO. Why would they? What do you?
Well, now, but it's over now.
All right, we're not getting any audio from Tom at the moment, so we will try to move on to Andrew, and we'll add Tom.
We'll try and
back
find
to
an analyst
you,
who knows how to make
to
basic
Tom.
computer tasks work.
Andrew, as soon as you can, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, wow. 2 strikes.
They need to ask Optimus to unmute
Too
himself.
slow behind.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, here we go.
Thanks so much for taking the question. So maybe just to start out on Optimus, Elon, you mentioned that there's really no supply chain today for Optimus. So you've had to mostly insource a lot of that yourself. I'm just curious, as you've gone through this exercise, are you seeing any suppliers willing to invest alongside you to set up domestic manufacturing to potentially help
If
you
you
scale
haven't developed the
more
product,
quickly
you can't
in the
build
US?
out a supply chain. You don't know what you
asking that in the
need.
context of obviously, you want to control your own destiny to some extent and ramp as quickly as possible. But from an investment cycle standpoint, potentially more capital efficient to have some partners, help you along the way. So I'm just curious how you're thinking about that and some of the dialogue you've had with potentially some external suppliers.
Do you have any specs at all for Optimus, Elon? Any specs you could share with a manufacturer?
Elon, you may be on mute right now. We can't hear you.
Everybody's stuck on mute. This is great.
Elon, you may be
our
on
supplies have been great, and they've made they have made and are making tremendous investments in support of Optimus and Robotaxi.
Tremendous investment sounds like material. Oh, and Robotaxi.
Samsung and
Okay,
TSMC
if you lump it,
are building fabs. TSMC in Arizona and Samsung in Texas, and putting in tens of billions of dollars for.
They're not doing that for your program, though. They're doing it.
Optimus and Robotaxi. Panasonic has also invested many billions in increasing battery cell production. I'm a little under the weather here. I'm a bit ill, so if I sound a little off, I'm kind of struggling with I'm a little bit ill today.
What?
So
we got the ketamine fever. What is it?
But
You're talking about Panasonic from years ago.
I'd like to thank them
He's saying,
for
what he's saying is that other
their
companies
investment
that they have partnered with are investing in increased
Thanks for that.
capacity, and the implication
maybe
being
just as
that somehow
So,
represents an investment.
sorry, Andrew, we're going to have Karn hop in here for additional color briefly.
Yeah, just to add to Elon's point, that the Samsung fab that's going to be pretty significantly dedicated to future projects. That's a massive investment, multi-billion-dollar. We're seeing the same level of investment going to memory, and also new specific parts like metal injection molded parts, flexible printed circuits, and all sorts of novel new technologies that are more based for the robot as opposed to the traditional vehicle supply chain we've had. And in certain cases where we don't find a great partner, we've never hesitated from insourcing it. And we have a very capable manufacturing engineering team and a design team that helps us scale those things.
Yeah, and actually,
So
I'd
the
also
answer
like to
is
thank
no.
Micron for
There are not supplier
giving us
investments in this
memory
program.
allocation. They've got to make some very tough decisions on memory allocation, and we really appreciate Micron making room for Tesla in the years to come and giving us actually a very significant allocation on reasonable terms, given the pretty insane pricing of memory these days.
That's a long way from saying that the investors are
Great.
or
Really
suppliers are
appreciate that
investing in
color.
order to be
And
part of
maybe
the
just my
project. They're
follow-up
saying, no,
on
we will
robotaxis. You
allocate,
guys
we
gave a
will
lot
let
of
you
great
pay us.
information in your prepared
Yeah,
remarks.
boy.
But there seems to be some evolving regulations at the state level, potentially around sensor requirements.
Hell
So I'm
yeah,
just
New
curious, as
Jersey
you think about
mentioned.
your own
We know who
rollout,
you are.
what do you want to see, or what do you need to see from regulators to make sure that, obviously some regulation might be good, but you don't want it to be overregulated. So what are you expecting to see? What do you want to see to make sure that this is, done in a proper way?
And we've got Lars on the line. Lars, if you wouldn't mind covering this one.
I've never heard on a call
sure,
people
Travis.
ask Elon questions and then be like, no.
When we
They're
talk about
feeding in, they're
regulation,
managing Elon here.
particularly in the U.S., we've made a lot of headway.
This is bad.
And just good initiatives from the federal government in terms of FMVSS rules, moving towards, acceptance and adoption of purely built AVs. And I really appreciate the support from NHTSA on that. When it comes to like a state to state level, obviously the stuff in New Jersey, is a little bit disheartening. I think ultimately, as Ashok said in his opening remarks, we really focus on the performance of the vehicle, and ultimately that's what's going to drive regulators and the public to adopt it. I think the best regulations are those that provide companies and innovators with a goal or a task and allow us to figure out the solution. And when we see regulations that provide a solution before identifying the problem, we really don't, appreciate those. But as Tesla always has and will continue to do, we'll let our performance speak for itself. And I think Ashok played that out really clearly, and that'll be the foundation of our expansion moving forward.
Great. Thanks for the questions.
Thanks so much. We're going to try Tom again. From RBC. Tom, can you unmute and try to speak, please?
Oh.
Unfortunately, Tom, we see you unmuted, but we're not hearing you. So we're going to have to send you back into the queue. Next is Alex from Bank of America. Alex, as soon as you can, please unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks for the questions here. Just a few follow-ups on Robotaxi, actually. I guess what milestones should investors be watching from here that would cause you to accelerate your fleet scaling or market deployments? Is it the further safety validation, like a miles driven per incident or something else? And then would you ever consider third-party distribution partnerships, such as with rideshare providers, to increase utilization?
This
or
is
is the
huge.
plan for now to keep
right now, this is what the
fully
whole
vertically
AV space is embroiled in, and figuring out how the technology providers and the operators are going to mesh. And it's knockdown, drag out fight.
We're vertically integrated with Robotaxi as we are in the rest of our business. So I don't think we're going to have any demand challenges with Robotaxi. So this is but the economics will be so compelling that I think we will really have a lot more desire to use the service than I think demand will outstrip our ability to service the demand. And so obviously there's no you can just go vertical in that situation. So it's really just about going through and what we call the march of nines of reliability, where you need how many nines of reliability do you need to scale? Ideally you want 99.99999% reliable.
I was struggling with
it's just
my words a little bit earlier in this
reliability. I think the only thing really constraining our growth in Robotaxi.
Forget the fact that he's recycling answers. He always does that, but he can't even.
Great. Thank you.
He has no fluidity with how he's
the next question is going to come from Colin at Wells Fargo.
All right, Colin usually
please,
has a good question in there. This will be the highlight of the analyst questions.
Oh, great. Thanks for taking my questions. There's been a lot of chatter about SpaceX and Tesla
See?
combining in some way.
My man,
A lot
Colin.
of collaboration already today.
Coming
I
through.
mean, Elon, do you see synergies eventually from combining the companies? Does
Lay
that
in the
make
trap.
sense from you, from
Lay
your
in the
perspective
trap.
over time?
Well, I mean, as you can tell from all the many collaborations on so many fronts with SpaceX, and there's a lot, there's more and more overlap.
There's more and more overlap.
Especially with TerraFab, that's really going to be a gigantic project. So, but obviously, we can't talk about combining companies and that kind of thing on an earnings call. It's got to be done with the appropriate process. And with that,
Okay,
I'll turn
there it
over to
is.
Brandon, our general
There
counsel.
it is.
Yeah, no, thanks, Elon. And that's exactly right. We continue to benefit from our relationship with SpaceX, and they've been a great partner, and we have numerous beneficial transactions with them. And earlier this year, we deepened our relationship through an investment and a framework agreement. And this will allow us to continue to work with them on projects that Elon mentioned, like TerraFab and Digital Optics.
Dude, did you see how quickly
Yeah,
they?
there's many other things too.
Screwed him
Obviously, you've got Grok in the car, so Grok helping drive Digital Optimus. You've also got Starlink being integrated into the Cybercab, and Starlink will be integrated into all of our vehicles, at least for markets that Starlink is active. Because for a robotaxi situation, you need to have coverage everywhere, and there are many places, even in Silicon Valley, where the cellular coverage is terrible or sometimes non-existent, which is surprising for Silicon Valley. But I know when I drive to work, those first 10-15 minutes, I can't actually do any calls because the cellular connectivity is so bad. So we can't have robotaxis getting stuck in these like Bermuda triangles of
He
lack
lives
of cellular connectivity.
Silicon Valley, Austin,
Starlink with
Texas,
its
Los
ability to
Angeles. Where is he
connectivity
talking
anywhere
about right now?
is actually quite important.
Like those
to
are the
even
three
have,
places that he spends his
you know,
time. Like there's no
robotaxis missing in action.
cell phone
And then obviously
coverage problems
if
in the
people
major
are
metropolitan.
sitting in the car, they're going to want to do high productivity stuff or
doing
watch
here?
entertainment. And with Starlink, you can watch 4K live sports in the car,
4K in your
and
robot.
with very low cost per gigabyte of data. That's really not feasible via the cellular system. And there's many other situations.
Yeah, I mean, I would say think of it like Ashok was mentioning about Cybercab, right? That the experience is great. In a world when you don't have to focus on driving, you have all the time in the car to do, whether it's a conference call,
So Ed,
watch a
where are
movie
they
or
going?
anything. That's why if you look at
Are
the
we going to
Cybercab
see
design,
an attempt
it
at a
has a big
SpaceX?
screen.
I
And,
think
we've
I
started
think
doing
Elon
Cybercab
was
rides
basically
in,
gave
our
away
factory in Austin.
that's the plan.
And when you go through that experience,
Oh, we have this project, we have this project, we have this.
I mean,
we have this
soon customers would be able to do it in
said
not
himself,
too distant future,
about
and then you'll
merger of
understand
these
why that
companies on this
connectivity
call. And
becomes
by
so
saying
important.
that, so he's in
Great.
bad
And then
shape,
Colin,
and
do you follow up?
he gave it away. And
Yeah, just
this is
if
like,
I would follow up on
I don't know about SEC
robotaxi,
disclosures
if I look
and
at the
stuff. Like I'm not a
launches,
lawyer on any of that, but
you've been
like
adding cities,
this feels.
but the number of
they-
units is still, looks like based on media reports, sort of in the dozens as opposed to hundreds.
Get their
Why
asses,
not
Colin.
just
Get
sort of
their
scale up
asses.
Austin or one or two cities before adding cities? And sort of what do you need to sort of get that, higher volume numbers in a major city? What sort of is the roadblock to sort of adding more vehicles on the ground?
Yeah, the reason we have been expanding across different cities instead of just doubling down on a single city is that we want to make sure that our stack is a very general one. It is a general one. We just want to
you still
go
have
prove
to
ourselves
validate
and
city to
other
city.
folks that it is working across a lot of different cities.
If it's
without too much
general,
effort
you don't
per
have to
city.
go city by city.
And that's what we see internally. And then, as Elon mentioned earlier, the growth rate has been literally exponential. Just it's
So
in the
there's
early
not
part
a-
of the exponential. That's why it's hard for others to comprehend.
No.
In terms of like miles versus the vehicles, since these vehicles operating the robotaxi fleet drive basically continuously, as opposed to human drivers who use vehicles for maybe a couple hours a day or something like that. These vehicles are in mostly continuous operation, which means that even for a few vehicles, you can get a lot of miles out of them. And that's why we are tracking the amount of unsupervised miles or just the number of vehicles or something like that. And we want to be operating in a very efficient fleet. So all of the work that goes into the efficiency makes it even more so that we get a lot of miles
So
per
give us a
vehicle,
utilization
available
rate
in the fleet.
number. I mean, I guess tell us what your
Just
fleet
to
is.
add
You say you have
further to this,
380,000
like,
miles a month.
Think of it.
Tell us what
we're
your
trying
fleet
to
size
scale
is,
this,
and you've got like
and we're
a.
trying to make sure
But no.
that there are different kinks which would be there, and there are things not just on the software front, on the operation front, which we're also trying to tackle. So that's why we're trying to have a broader footprint to try and make sure before we go really high in terms of deployment, that we are able to sort these things out in a smaller fleet in a controlled manner.
Yeah,
It's
one of the
because
things
you
that
have to
Cybercab
validate
should
locally.
be noted is because it is a new vehicle chassis, we need to accumulate driving data that is specific to the Cybercab before we can put a lot of them on the road. So unlike say Model 3 and Model Y and our other vehicles, where we've got a lot of vehicles on the road, millions of vehicles on the road, we don't have that for Cybercab, so we actually have to accumulate miles with Cybercabs that are retrofitted with steering wheels and brakes, acceleration, braking pedals, that kind of thing, to calibrate to the Cybercab chassis. So you'll see
There it is.
As we are confident about that, the number of Cybercabs in cities will increase dramatically.
Yeah, here he admitted Tesla's basic
Great.
fundamental
Our next
strategy
question is
that
from-
the learning
oh,
data, the
yeah,
data
go ahead,
from
Lars.
If I can
the
just add
scale
like
of the
one
fleet
thought
that they
here,
have,
the other
it's
reason I just
irrelevant.
want to like point out
Hasn't-
is, like TCO, transportation regulatory situations are different city by city, state by state. There's not a federal, framework to do that. And so like the reason we're expanding city by city is to make sure that we're meeting all of those one at a time, and we're satisfying, all of the requests of each individual city and in everywhere we can. And so we have to expand, to each city to meet those requirements, and we'll continue to do so. And until all of what Ashok and Vaibhav and Ashok said, we'll follow with the scaling.
Yeah, that's
Thanks, Lars.
true for like California,
The next
right?
question is
Where
from
you have to
Walt,
get both the
from
DMV
Lightshed.
and the Public
Walt,
Utility
please unmute
Commission to
yourself.
sign off. But the fact that cities have
Just a quick
performance
follow-up for
standards or
that
anything
Lars
like
comment.
that.
I mean, the
no,
NHTSA
no.
administrator, Jonathan Morrison, was just on CNBC. He already, was trying to get rid of the pedal and said, I forget his exact term, but it seemed like he wanted to get rid of the steering wheel. It seemed like that would be a gating factor. But is there other things that you need at the federal level to really kind of unlock your ability to ramp Cybercab?
Yes.
The short answer is no. I mean, I think we have a great relationship with NHTSA and Director Administrator Morrison, especially. And I think they're just following through with what the public wants and the world knows is coming, and they're trying to stay ahead of it and make sure that they're doing the right things in place. So we've been open and honest with them for the last couple of years about what our plans were and what we're doing, and I don't want to say we're in lockstep, but I feel like we have a partner there, and we're working together on it.
You're not in lockstep with the agency that still has like a bunch of open investigations into you. Interesting.
Starlink obviously is integrated in Cybercab, and you guys just talked about the connectivity for watching movies, but what about the flip side of that? Can the Cybercabs become remote hotspots for Starlink Mobile? And then similarly, roadmap question on the Semi, when do you anticipate looking at autonomy for the Semi? Because that seems like a pretty sizable market as well in terms of autonomous trucking.
That was the craziest thing about the Semi unveil was that they didn't mention self-driving, and it seems like they've only grafted onto that program in the last year.
Allude to, there is a really serious shortage of truckers. So there just aren't enough people who want to drive trucks, which are crucial for transport throughout America. So an autonomous Semi is actually going to be very important to address the shortage of truck drivers, and obviously will be great for improving safety and making it easier on truck drivers to have a self-driving Semi is going to I think dramatically improve safety and comfort for truck drivers that use this as a Semi. the since the units, the total number of units of the Tesla Semi is still low and will continue to be a very small percentage even by the end of this year of our total vehicle fleet, it makes sense for us to focus our efforts, our self-driving efforts, on our high volume vehicles.
So they're not developing
Model
for
3
it.
and Y, and solving self-driving for
Holy
and
shit.
really getting to the point where it's
They're already behind
generalized, unsupervised self-driving for
Yeah.
for those vehicles. And Cybercab.
Wow.
So we expect to get self-driving, working on the Tesla Semi, probably around the end of this year or early next year.
So could be a decade then.
We have the next little quote for those videos that show
Yeah.
we promise all the time.
6 months, maybe 9 months, definitely.
Self-driving of safety for self-driving on 3Y and Cybercab. That's so that it's taking a bit of a backseat for the next 6 months or so for autonomous semi, but it will be, it will definitely be a big working next year and in time for the scale up to high production of the Tesla Semi,
which is now happening next year.
For communications, yeah, I think there's an interesting angle there where you could use the Starlink terminals that are in the Tesla cars as like sort of cell towers, I suppose, or connectivity towers, basically for providing relays on the ground to cell phones and to
you can hear his brain melting, basically. Like just the struggle. This is like a guy trying to climb the last quarter mile of a mountain.
All right. Our next question is going to come from Will at Truist. Will, please unmute yourself.
Great. Thanks so much for taking my question. Elon, you teased us a little bit about sort of the supply chain relative to Optimus, highlighting how difficult it's going to be, but we'd be really interested to understand what your propensity is to manufacture semis for this yourself. When we think about microprocessors, microcontrollers, actuators, and other semiconductors that are going to be used, it occurs to me that you have many that are commercially available. You have an option to design some but have them made at third-party fabs. You also have the option potentially to design and make them yourself. What should we think about your propensity to source these components in these different manners?
You're talking about making like microcontrollers and small, like the various computers that are in the car that operate, like the steering system and the braking system.
No, I'm talking about for Optimus, not for.
Optimus has a lot of really specialized power electronics and circuit boards. It's all Tesla design stuff, but it is fabricated by suppliers.
Keep in mind when you're listening to this that they've already mentioned
for
a point for this product.
Optimus 4, which will be built in Austin, that will be a much more vertically integrated supply system for Optimus 4, and that would we'd aim to have an order of magnitude more production of Optimus 4 than Optimus 3. So sort of aspirationally 10 million units a year versus 1 million units a year of Optimus 3.
And Optimus 3 is being built in Fremont, so we're talking two different factories.
Insanely difficult to scale production.
This whole Optimus story, Ed, I'm sorry, I need a drink or something.
Listen, take a moment, pour yourself one by all means.
It's too profoundly stupid. It really is.
It really is.
As a follow-up, well, first, maybe you could talk about the timing as to when Optimus 4 should be, let's say, start production. But the actual follow-up I wanted to ask was the plan to upgrade hardware 3 to hardware 4 in order to be able to process, I suppose it's version 15 of and future versions of FSD. Is that still the plan to do hardware upgrades on the cars?
I think it's going to make sense to upgrade all cars with that are have less than hardware for almost all, any cars that have cameras, basically, because otherwise it would be probably too many modifications. But anything that's got sort of that's set up for cameras, it'll be financially sensible at some point to upgrade them. But I think we'd want to upgrade them to the next generation of like next generation AI board. So it'll be either like we have an upgraded AI4 chip that's sort of a medium, sort of a moderate improvement over AI4, probably reaches production around the middle of next year. And then there's also AI5, which hopefully is in volume production around the middle of next year. AI5 will initially go into Optimus. And actually making very good progress. So the chip team is really doing great work and making incredibly fast progress on AI5. And I'm very excited about the design of the Tesla AI6 chip. I think it's going to be the best edge computing chip in the world. And if somebody's got a better one, I'd like to meet that person and shake their hand, because
wasn't this kind of a question about when is my car that was supposed to be FSD capable going to get upgraded?
So I think we got
and we've got two naked admissions so far that, like, A, the fleet development strategy hasn't worked, and B, now it's not just a software problem, it's not just a compute problem, but it's actually a sensor hardware problem.
Great. We are coming over
everything
the hour,
about
but we're
Tesla's
gonna
strategy is out the
squeeze,
window.
Dan in. So from Barclays, Dan, please unmute yourself.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. I'd like to ask about the pace and path of CapEx. Elon, in the past, you've said that you'll spend as much as you can, but really efficiency seems like it's the gating factor. So, to what extent right now in this CapEx cycle is your pace of CapEx effectively capped simply because spending any more would be done in an inefficient manner? And to what extent is the pace of CapEx really the primary
remember
determinant
2017
right
at
now
all?
in unlocking?
You remember building two
different
lines,
supply
neither of
constraints
which
that you have?
worked? Any ringing any bells
Yeah,
there?
it's a good question. I've actually, what I've asked the Tesla team to do is like really we should be spending on CapEx as fast as we can spend, as fast as we can, without it being too wasteful. So we're not trying to aim for like some extremely high efficiency capital spend, because that would slow things down. So it's a balance between like how much sort of capital efficiency versus time. So if we can be, it's okay to be a little less capital efficient if we get things done sooner, because that's actually going to be the higher NPV.
But everything is being delayed. Everything is behind schedule.
So, overall, I'm pretty happy with.
You're neither efficient nor fast.
Doing an incredible amount of construction and production growth in so many different arenas simultaneously. I don't think there's ever been a company that's done this at the scale. Maybe proportionately back when Henry Ford did the Model T or something like that, or World War II when companies were making. It had to sort of scale up weapons production, but I think probably this is the fastest industrial scale up since World War II in America.
You've been
and I will just add a
robotaxi
little
for
bit
a
on
decade.
that. Basically, if you look at it, all our spend on CapEx is trying to do productive assets, right? We're basically scaling
Where are the
factories,
assets?
whether it's Optimus, whether it's Cybercab.
These don't exist. These are not, in fact, productive assets.
Earlier this year, or the semi factory.
Well, there are so many companies
or
that
even
use
putting in a
unproductive
semiconductor fab in there,
yeah.
as well as
Very comforting.
we are trying to get,
for example, a diner,
solar
hypothetically,
manufacturing in the U.S. In fact,
yeah, very important. But this is underrated, by the way. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to. Basically, the amount of solar manufacturing which happens in the U.S., we're just going to multiply it with an order of magnitude.
Why doesn't more solar manufacturing happen in the U.S.?
Easy, right? Because what you have to do is, in order to build a factory, you have to start from ground zero. So just so you know, again, I don't think we have shared this. We end up being the general contractor for almost all our construction facilities because we are doing that much construction. And so going back to what Elon was saying, we're going at a very rapid scale. And yes, this means that we are doing a lot of things all at the same time. And that's why, we just have to go as fast as we can, humanly make things work in the real world.
Yeah, but our CapEx efficiency, I think, is off scale good.
So he's like, it's a balance of speed and efficiency, and then it's like, oh no, it's speed, and then it's like, oh no, it's efficient. Like
energy storage, which I think is
what are words anyway?
A key topic here. Maybe you can just address, to what extent is energy storage going to be supply constrained for the foreseeable future, and then just to what extent are the deployments right now the typical peak shaving that you'd see at utilities versus you've talked about in some of your materials. For battery storage, addressing the quality of power issue for data centers, given the sharp fluctuations in power use, where you have an advantage given software or power electronics. So just what is that demand curve right now between data centers versus just broader peak shaving for utilities?
Data centers
Well,
use any
it's still
batteries.
mostly, it's not just peak shaving, but it's also grid balancing. So it's not just like the facts are on briefly, but
peak shaving
for balancing power from wind generation and solar generation, batteries are awesome. The solar battery combination will be how the vast majority of energy in the world is produced in the future. That's already, of course, how all of the Starlink satellites are powered, is with solar panels and batteries.
It's outer, well,
you
try
can think
plugging
of
one
like a
in,
giant
buddy.
satellite.
How do you plug? How else do you get power in
There's
orbit?
far more power available from the sun than anything else by far.
They're in space.
And we think power constraints are going to be
hydro doesn't work so well
are
up there.
a major issue for AI. Just turning on the AI computers, the AI compute demand is so high that people are having even the so-called the hyperscalers are having trouble turning on their AI compute and finding the power, and then smoothing the power with especially for the training runs where the power cycles dramatically in a very short period of time. You can have during a training run the power consumption can drop by 70% for 100 milliseconds, and you really need fast-acting advanced power electronics to be able to smooth out these massive changes in power, especially during their training runs. So that's why SpaceX has bought so many megapacks for the data centers. It's actually
is that why they bought so many Cybertrucks too?
Mostly for smoothing out the power for the training runs. But it will also be useful for being able to tap more power from the grid by if you tell utilities that they can that they will not need to supply power during the worst hours or the worst days of the year because the batteries can handle it, then that makes it much easier for them to give you power. In fact, probably the best way to scale total energy production in the United States is simply using batteries, because there's, I think, around 1.2 or 1.3 terawatts of power production in the US, but the average power usage is only half a terawatt. So you've got 2.5 times as much power generation as the average usage. That means you could potentially double the energy output of the United States just with batteries.
Wow.
So we see
Should we talk
demand
about
for
Elon's in his box era. We're gonna put batteries in a box, and we're gonna put like processors in a box.
That is all the time we
vision.
have for today for
Inspiring
Q&A.
vision.
We appreciate everyone's questions, and we look forward to talking to you next quarter. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, everyone.
Well, they kept it to an hour. My goodness, that was So we've had some low energy calls, relatively low energy calls for a while. I would say the last year and a half, 2 years in general have been not so low energy. They've been like more holding pattern. And this though, like, Elon sounded like shit before and he's been like incoherent before, but like the management of him and everything, that was definitely a little bit unusual.
Yeah, a lot of substitutions in the soccer game for Elon here,
Yeah, usually it's him cutting off the execs. What you almost never see is the execs cutting him off or like jumping in to take the question. And I think, and I want to just, since we were in the middle of the call, to me, the biggest tell, like the most actionable piece of information for me from this call is basically Elon signaling that indeed SpaceX is ultimately at some point going to buy Tesla. He said it wasn't appropriate to talk about in this call, which was absolutely the case, but he did it anyway. And just saying that was I think potentially sketchy. You know more about disclosure and financial regulation stuff than I do, though. Like what are the legal issues around that?
Well, let's talk. I don't think he did anything actionable by discussing it the way he did.
Okay.
But let's talk about why would, if you're a Tesla shareholder, why would you approve a merger with, for Elon, let's talk about, he has absolute control over SpaceX. And
Right.
so some people say if SpaceX bought Tesla, he would want to keep that absolute control. So SpaceX would have to be the surviving company with that kind of share class structure. All right. On the other hand, you can't get into the S&P 500 that way. And the magic for Tesla's share price has been passive flows, which just don't end and force ever more buying by the companies with the largest market caps.
Yeah.
That's now been documented by a lot of scholars. That's why these biggest companies keep getting bigger and bigger, despite, outrageous fundamentals compared to their price. So, the way to accomplish that would be to have a reverse merger where Tesla survives and then hope the S&P committee, which has to be congratulating itself on not bending its rules after all, seeing what's happened with NASDAQ and FTSE Russell. Because, the people who own those NASDAQ 100 and Russell 1000 index funds have been clobbered by their SpaceX already, just clobbered.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to me you've got a lot of reasons why a merger like that would be problematic. The Tesla shareholders are going to have a say. And I don't see them wanting to be part of SpaceX. You have an auto business here that at least sort of makes some money and an energy storage business that does as well. Now, he's doing absurd things with CapEx that do not benefit either of those businesses. They're for the benefit of SpaceX. But do you want to be part of this company? Ed, I think we're going to see SpaceX stock really struggle. These unlocks, if you've looked at the schedule of stock unlocks starting in early August and continuing out to November, that's an enormous amount of selling pressure.
Yeah.
It's going to really knock the SpaceX price way down. And I think that's going to change the enthusiasm, if any, for Tesla shareholders to want to be part of SpaceX. I could be wrong.
You make a great point, and I can't really refute what you're saying, but I do think the other view on this is that Tesla just looks like it's going for a controlled crash landing. Like it's not going anywhere, right? So the CapEx thing, right? Like, it looks like the CapEx is going towards SpaceX. We don't know that for sure. We'll see, we'll be able to, I think, hopefully in the months to come, piece together sort of what's actually going on there, hopefully. What we do know is that CapEx is not going into the core product lineup. That's the thing. Tesla has on paper all this cash, and yet product wise, we've had the Cybertruck. Now we have the Cybercab. We don't have a low cost vehicle. We don't have a next generation Model 3 or Model Y platform being talked about. Normally at this part of the product cycle in an automotive business, you were absolutely, this is, 2017 was a long time ago, and they've done a lot of iterative improvement on that, but like a fresh platform for their core, as a car company, you're right. Like Tesla is the Model 3 and the Model Y. It's a one platform company. And, you can sort of do that, I think, but like you need to make core updates to that, right? To the platform, to the body, the sheet metal. And what do you have? You have the Cybertruck, and they didn't mention on the call at all. The only new product is the Model YL. So it's like oh, it looks like we got Sean O'Kane back. Hey Sean. So the capex is not going into the car business. So there's no reason to believe that car business will come back. Meanwhile, it's really, I think, for me, really important to understand about this call that they walked back both, and they've been moving towards this for a while, and it's been implicit and sort of, you can see this between the lines, but they really made it clear that all of the foundations of Tesla's self-driving strategy are out the window now. The idea that it was going to be a scaled fleet and that the data from the size of their fleet was going to be the key differentiator is clearly not the case. If they can't take that data and use it to develop, I mean, the Semi is a pretty different product. I guess you could sort of understand how that might be different, but the Cybercab, that you can't get synergy in development. I mean, these are not like fundamentally different sized vehicles, and yes, like, you know, sensor position does play into training and stuff, but like their whole thing is that it was supposed to be general, it was supposed to be trained off vehicle fleet, and you know, and so they're saying we have to when we have a new product, we have to develop FSD for the new product, and when we have a new market, we have to, and they really try to avoid admitting this, but it's very obvious, they have to do development work for new markets as well. So they've had to become an L4 company. So in other words, the car business has nowhere to go. The FSD self-driving thing, like the fundamentals that have kept that strategy, the narrative viable for a decade, are all out the window now. And so what's the there? And so I think I agree completely. There's some really fundamental problems with having space, you know, sort of, if this is the strategy that basically Tesla's going into a controlled, you know, belly landing essentially, and the goal is for SpaceX to scoop it up off the ground, or before it hits the ground, right? And to answer your previous question, why would Tesla shareholders want that? And to prevent it from going to zero, I guess is really the answer, right? Like whatever downsides the SpaceX acquisition would have, it would be better than this thing just sort of losing confidence and bottoming out and going away. But, you know, none of these look very, none of these are great options, right?
Talk to us, Sean.
I mean, I think you're hitting on something that really stuck out to us while we were watching too. Just that comment about it not being something that they can easily port over to Cybercab is a weird thing to abruptly bring up, especially in a moment when they're sort of in parallel running, you know, different, what by their own definition, very different vehicles now of Model Y SUVs and Cybercabs.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, I always feel a bit lacking when it comes to some of the analyst questions, but it's like one of those things where you're kind of sitting there looking at the call and just being like, why isn't somebody asking more about that? Because that seems very strange to me. And, you know, sort of once again, I'll point out, like, they had the opportunity to start selling droves of, you know, ostensibly affordable cars built off the same platform that Cybercab is built on, that they could have been using to capture. If this really was the problem, that they weren't going to be able to port over the, you know, what they're developing with FSD into Cybercab, like, why wouldn't they go the route of like selling a bunch of people, even if it's fleets or whatever, you know, these sort of drivable versions of the Cybercab, and let people start training that way. I will say, like, there has to be some sort of backbone, right? Like, I mean, they're talking about the way that I've seen some of the folks who follow this stuff really closely, you know, even on the sort of more fanboyish side, is that what they've been developing for Robotaxi, they're essentially now just like distilling down to, you know, the consumer version of FSD. And I do wonder, like, there has to be some, it can't possibly be, maybe not, I shouldn't speak in absolutes, that they're just starting from absolute scratch with what Cybercab is. Like, there has to be something. And I would just, that's where I'm like, I would want to know more about that from them, in a way that it didn't seem like folks were immediately reactively curious about on the call. And I'm sure they'll get those questions moving forward. But yeah, that was a big thing that stuck out to me, where it's just like, I don't, what an odd thing to be so confident that you've had, quote, no notable crashes, which is
Nota-
what
you
a,
can
what
say
a
notable
load
crashes,
bearing.
notable incidents, which could
Notable
mean literally
incidents.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
words. What do they mean?
Yeah.
To be boasting about that on only 380,000 miles, which is nothing.
Yeah, to 20
and then
million for Waymo.
10 minutes later, make that comment about the sort of how Cybercab is in its own little sort of sandbox of training right now is just a very weird dichotomy, even for a company like this that loves weird dichotomies.
Yeah, then there's a whole other wrinkle to this that has been implicit, and it was very difficult to sort of report my own findings about this in my book, and I've tweeted a bit about it elsewhere, because I can't tell what's going on inside a car, and you only have so much observational data that you can acquire, and I strongly believe, and that and based on my observations in Austin, which are now a year old, but like I strongly believe that the development work that they were doing there, and which they now I think continue to do, assuming that this hasn't changed fundamentally in other cities, is that the software that those vehicles are running is just fundamentally. I mean, it may well be related. We may be able to call it a fork. And it's interesting because they talked about sort of like how they're now sort of running a version of 15 or whatever. Well, 15 could be anything as long as it's not in the consumer cars. Like, yeah, you could say anything's 15. But like the amount of vehicles with LiDAR on them that they're using in these areas, and then just I one particular anecdote where I'd been spending a week observing the robotaxi fleet in Austin, and I saw another vehicle that was identical, same Model Y, negotiating some basic a roundabout, and it was just like super janky, and I realized as I drove past, this was a customer car, and it was just not performing anywhere near the same as what the robotaxis were. This to me, like the fact that analysts haven't been able to get anything on this, the fact that investigative journalists, and I know how hard it is to get the sourcing and whatever to prove something like this, but to me but what's crazy is that even if that's not happening, even if I'm totally wrong about that, just based on what they said on this call alone, we know that they've completely abandoned what was for 10 years their narrative about why they were going to succeed in this technology. And so it's like, okay, so now we can't take data from our vehicle fleet and put it into the cybercab or into the truck, and yet even more of our company's value is built on the presumption that that not only is our core software extensible to these different vehicle models, but that it also somehow is extensible to the fucking Optimus robot. Like that's the idea that the synergy there is the only reason why Tesla or Elon didn't just start a brand new Optimus company, right?
Yeah, last I checked, a humanoid robot is an even more different form factor than a cybercab compared to a Model Y SUV.
But that's been the core of the narrative, is that somehow that this technology is extensible.
It's it's also just one of the other things that stuck out to me near the end of the call was just how I don't even know the right way to describe it. All affordances given to the man who was apparently sick with something, but like he was just so zoned out talking about this hardware 3 issue, which still seems like a pretty big. I know consequences don't exist anymore in our society and in our country, but like this idea that like we're just gonna we'll just upgrade all the ones with cameras.
Yeah.
It's like, how? Like, what? I know I'm not asking for him to go out and start saying things like he was saying last quarter about, we're going to build micro factories like in every city or whatever, which is an idea that, no one's ever had before. And it's also worked a ton. Arrival. But,
right.
It's just like,
but retrofitting too is just so it's one thing to manufacture in a microfactory, but a microfactory for retrofitting, not just the compute, but then the sensors and the wiring.
Yeah, I would want to know, you've had 3 months since you talked about that idea for the first time in a real way. Have you made any assumptions since then, or made any progress as to like how you think you're going to tackle that and what kind of effect that's going to have on your now slightly, but maybe continually, based on their comments, dwindling cash balance? And I do think one of the things that was easy to miss in that call, I think they've kind of alluded to this before, I haven't checked, but I think the CFO was saying, was talking up accessing debt markets more than I've heard them talk about that in the past. And I think that that's like, unsurprising if, they still have a lot of cash, but if they're talking about increasing CapEx for the next 2 to 3 years, that isn't going to fuel all of it. They're going to have to find that cash from somewhere. And he said sort of pretty explicitly that they'll tap the debt markets. And, I'm sure they're going to get cheaper access to that than SpaceX has right now, but it's not nothing. It's something to consider.
Sean, did you hear our discussion about the merger speculation?
I didn't. What did you guys have to say? Because I thought very funny moment for him to punt to the GC.
Before we jump to that, because I do, let's get into it. But really quick, this is progress. The debt market thing, it slipped past me. I must have been making a snarky comment. That's progress from last call. They got sort of, it seemed like ambushed by a question about how are you going to fund all this CapEx. And they said, we're going to securitize robotaxi revenues. That was the answer in the Q1 call. So the fact that they're saying we're going to debt markets, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's definitely
I've said they're going to be opportunistic in securing certain debt facilities that will give us capacity to borrow up to $30 billion to help accelerate their CapEx investments. So
I need to step away from
that's just a very specific claim that they haven't made.
Yourselves. Okay, I'll be right back.
What was your guys' comment on the merger stuff? Because that was a fun.
Why do you think they'd have better receptivity in the debt market than SpaceX? Of course, was able to float $25 billion, and now it's all underwater. Don't you think that's going to make debt investors a little bit wary about this whole enterprise?
It's possible. To me, like there's just a longer track record. Listen, Tesla has been profitable for a while now. Like the business itself is a bit more fleshed out in a way that SpaceX isn't. And I feel like that would probably get rewarded in that setting because people, are just more familiar with what the shape of everything looks like under the hood, and B, willing to extend that kind of capital, especially when it comes to these kinds of infrastructure build outs that are happening. So I feel like those things would probably work in Tesla's favor. I don't know how much they would factor in, their history with debt too. But they haven't really had a lot of debt on their balance sheet for a while. So I wonder how much that would play into it too. But I don't know, that's kind of where I'm at with that. It just seems like it would be an easier pill to swallow.
Now that Ed is back, Ed and I were discussing the merger discussion that came up. And I see impediments to a merger that a lot of people don't. And we just wanted your take on, if you're a Tesla shareholder, how receptive are you to merging with SpaceX at a time when stock unlocks are happening rapidly through the end of this year, and SpaceX shares will be under tremendous pressure, already below their IPO price significantly? And
I think the post-IPO, this month that they've been public has clouded that idea more than I think people expected, which is just a really interesting dynamic because it certainly looked like the path was pretty primed for something to happen relatively, on the sooner side than the later side when it comes to these two companies combining. And I think that just is not the same case that it was a month and a half ago. I guess it really does depend on, do we see, we've had a lot of talk from the long-standing SpaceX holders heading into and out of the IPO, all of the venture folks, all of the, and even to some extent, some of the employees, longtime employees and executives who were, really hyping up the idea that they're at the beginning of something here, and therefore they're not going to sell. Google has this massive stake, and it's just like, I wonder if the calculus has changed there, if those folks were sort of inflating that a bit, because that could have some effect. Like, I think we've already seen how much of an impact the fact that they only are floating 4% of their shares has had on the stock price already. So it really wouldn't take much from some of the larger shareholders for sure. But even if a bunch of employees start selling, to move that and complicate the picture, and then to your point, like I think there is a hesitancy in some of the most faithful Tesla folks, at least based on what they say publicly, that makes me wonder if they would have questions about how that would come together. And certainly the most interesting outcome here for me would be, a sort of like contested merger situation versus something where, Elon just gets to do whatever he wants. And I do feel like we're closer to a testier version of that business combination now than we were a month and a half ago.
Guys, I have to bug out, but listen, enjoyed it a lot. Sean, nice to meet you, and interested
too.
More what you have to say.
Thanks so much
Ed,
for
we'll
joining
talk.
us. Yeah,
All
this
right.
was great. And we'll talk more. And you and I are going to do a full hour-long conversation episode of a future live stream.
It never ends.
It never ends. There's always more to talk about. Good to see you. Yeah, so I mean, I will say, like, the whole thing of Elon bringing up the possibility of a merger, not to a question that was specific, like super, like he did not have to go there.
Yeah.
And then his execs jumping in. I can't remember the last time an exec pounced. And then they took turns. There was like 3 of them took turns being like,
Yeah.
we're talking about projects, we're talking about projects, we're talking about projects,
Yep.
we're talking about projects. That was,
Yeah, I mean,
that
you
was
could-
quite a moment.
You could write that off as being, oh, hey, our man's feeling a little under the weather here. Let's help him out. But it really was so distinct from other calls where, one of the frustrations on the reporter side of things with these calls is always like they say up top, we'll be joined by Elon and other executives, and they never name who else is talking.
Right.
And we've come to know, like, okay, I know what Lars's voice sounds like, or I know in the past, like, what Drew sounds like. But, that's been harder over the last 2 years, as a lot of those executives have turned out. And this is the first time where people were introducing each other even just by first name. I think because they knew they had to step in a little bit more because he's sick or something. And so, but yeah, that question, I mean, I'm looking at it now, Colin from Wells Fargo, who I think is one of the more artful analysts when it comes to asking these questions.
Oh, he's hands down the best analyst on these. Colin for the last couple of years has been the best analyst on these.
He knew he could run into a wall of it not being answered. And so the way he sort of phrased it was like trying to get him to talk up the synergies, between the companies, which is a really nice euphemism.
Yeah, it was great question. Like the way he asked the question was very well done. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just, it was to hear Elon Musk say it's got to be done with the appropriate process.
Right.
It's just a very funny thing to hear.
And you can't just tweet about some merger. You can't just say stuff.
Yeah. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Brandon, our general counsel. It just like I had a very out of body moment then and there, because the idea of him, how many years did we spend post 2018 trying just to figure out if they actually hired or named a Twitter sitter? Like they are so anti like people telling them what to do and doing things by the books. And so for him to go as far as to say, like, and now here's the general counsel, who this time is no longer my divorce lawyer, is somebody else. Like it's just such a weird moment. And then we got the most lawyered response you could possibly imagine from him, which is no surprise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I certainly it was an interesting moment, and it also just makes me like really wonder how they're thinking about this over there, and whether the picture has been complicated.
Yeah, and maybe Elon. Maybe everyone knows that Elon wants to or plans to merge these companies, but they, as Tesla, they're all Tesla shareholders. You know what I mean? Like it could be one of the moments at which his interests diverge from his own executives. And I don't want to read too much into it.
There's certainly been enough of that, that's been reported. I'm sure you have like come across some of that stuff in your research for your book, and we saw it. We saw a lot of it even in the Isaacson book, which I don't think he was even really looking for that dissonance, but he still found it.
Yeah.
Among some of the top executives.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting to just consider that that's always there in the background, and it's possible. And again, like I don't want to read too much into like the sentiment of the most brain rotted Twitter users, but like but there have been a lot of them who in the yesterday they announced robotaxi in Orlando, in Tampa, with no definition as to how many, can you hail the ride? People posted videos and say, okay, yeah, you can actually ride. That's not just the car is there.
Yeah.
But seeing backlash from people who are ostensibly like the most, piped up influencers for this stuff, being like, this is getting old, man. Like, you guys did this last quarter with Dallas and Houston. You're only doing it so you can say it on the call tomorrow. Like, there's an exhaustion there that I think is really interesting, that I also think is a headwind that they will have to push against if they come to the point of having to convince people, to combine with SpaceX. Now, that said, they've shown that their shareholder base is willing to approve basically anything. Like, I mean, they're operating with like 75% approval on stuff like $1 trillion pay package, even with like a serious amount of defection from shareholders. Like,
yeah, there'll be like seven shareholder letters, and yet the vote is like 87 to, percent in favor.
And like,
Saddam Hussein margins.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I don't think it's like insurmountable by any stretch. And also, those folks their whims tend to shift, when it's convenient. And so like, I just think it's worth considering that, but I also don't think it's like the biggest barrier.
Yeah. Well, and I think the problem writ large, for I think just given the way that people think and relate to this whole phenomenon is that, right, like for a very long time, Elon Musk fan, being a Tesla shareholder, all this stuff not only had like financial benefits or potential financial benefits, but had a lot of social capital benefits. And like, that's just increasingly not the case. And, and part of it was, the political involvement over the last year, but part of it is just, I don't know, like getting mad about the Odyssey and just like being a racist and like all this stuff just sort of adds up. And so seeing what's interesting is as the, someone asked really early on, like, why do you even look at these numbers and stuff? And certainly we're not analyzing them objectively the way you would like to think in, your economic 101 class about how this all stuff is supposed to work. But what the numbers provide, and then these calls and the vibes and just everything that goes along with these performances is the signals trajectory and momentum, right? And that's always been the Tesla's never been profitable. It's certainly never been profitable enough to come close to justifying its valuation, but volume was going up, margins were going up, this was going up, wait for this, there's always more, and that's the stuff. It's very intangible, but that's the stuff that's completely broken down. That sense that this is actually going somewhere has completely broken down, and I don't know how he gets it back.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it that way. I mean, it was not that long ago that we were hearing him talk about, we're going to have 20 gigafactories around the world, right? Like, we're going to be building 20 million cars per year by the end of this decade.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things when the pay package came out, the $1 trillion pay package came out, that I wrote, which was, because I couldn't get over it. Like, all of these milestones, these operational milestones he needs to hit to unlock the full value of that. Many of them are kind of crazy, not SpaceX crazy, but kind of crazy. And yet they're all just on their face, watered down versions of the things he had been claiming before, like, oh, what is it, 10 million or I can't believe this is escaping me right now, 10 million or 20 million cumulative sales. I guess it's 20 million, right?
Yeah, it's 20 million, I think. Yeah.
And it's like, they're almost at 10 now. They're at like 9.7 or something. Like, that's a layup, considering that, again, they were promising 20 million automotive sales per year by 2030.
Twice the largest automakers around. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I think, to your point, like, we've just really seen, like, you could really do this at the end of any of the last, call it 4, 5, 6 quarters, but especially now, you could really just take a step back and say, there's a ceiling here. There's a ceiling on profitability. Not only is there a ceiling on profitability, but they have been playing a card. They are really cutting to the bone to get this other stuff working, and like, they are taking advantage smartly of the fact that they had better margins than any other automaker in order to run these price wars, in order to squeeze out volume. But, I think to your point earlier when we were on before the call, the fact that they're even calling out, because I've been sort of ambiently talking about this geographic stuff for a while, of like, they're leaning on this expansion into new markets to offset the, especially last year, the plunge in sales in the US. And that they're even sort of like backed against the wall and feeling like they need to call these out, all these new countries out in that way. And it's not like Saudi Arabia, and it's not, like he said, it's not like Germany, like Lithuania.
Even
what's
Norway
the ceiling there?
Point.
What's
Norway
the
has
durability?
that symbolic value.
Yeah, there's just no durability of any of that there. And I think for folks who are looking for signs that or may have seen the jump in sales last quarter and said, oh man, all this effort that people put out to try and raise awareness, as if he's not doing it enough, to like how this man's personality is affecting the brand and the company and all that stuff. Oh, it was for naught, because now they're back up to almost 500,000 in sales. It's like sales are still dropping in the US, that there's still a lasting effect there. And it's, at that point, it's really, are there new markets for them to tap? Is there anywhere further they can go closer to the bone in order to keep moving these vehicles? And like one other thing I'll add to that too is like, I don't think this is terribly surprising, but like they spent how long? Like a year and a half post him canceling this idea of a $25,000 car, teasing over and over again of this idea of like, oh, more affordable models built on our existing lines. And, don't worry about the fact that we're not going to do a $25,000 car. We got something waiting for you. Don't worry about it at all. And then it just wound up being the most stripped down versions of the 3 and the Y that don't seem to be moving the needle much, right? Like I don't know.
They didn't even mention the Model YL on the call. They didn't even talk about
it. That you could make an argument that's actually the
product.
most compelling new product they've put out in a while. New product,
since the Model Y.
Car.
Yeah.
But like, and that they didn't even talk that up is interesting. And one other actual thing that I will say, I saw, and to veer into total, like I saw on X and I didn't follow up, but I did see that like it appears they're remaking some of their stores with just a full branding marketing exercise around FSD. And so like they're really pivoting the way that they sell these cars in a way that could be interesting, if they're really going to put that front and center in a way that they had never really had before. I don't know if that's enough to like attract new buyers. I really do think they're at a ceiling when it comes to overall sales.
I think that's the top line, right? Is that everyone who has who wants a Tesla kind of has one, and I think there's a certain amount of replacement demand, but that is until our chat provides, Bennett Elder in the chat has provided us with a good marketing line, which is take the L, the Model YL.
I like that.
Brilliant stuff. Love it. Kirsten, what's up? How much fun did you have on that call?
I enjoyed it deeply.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about, I was too busy resetting my entire laptop system right now. It's been an arduous last 10 minutes, but did either of you mention his like obvious vomit burps that were happening?
No, my audio quality was not that good. Tell us more.
Well, you mentioned that he wasn't feeling well, and like at one point it literally was like, oh, we're listening to him like choke down.
It was rough. It was a rough
It sounded rough. It sounded rough.
Yeah. I was like, I with the stream and guests and everything, it's a little hard to be too focused on those details.
So,
I mean,
other than that,
protecting me from it, though.
Yeah, no.
Also, by the way,
listen.
This entire stream, just for a little behind the scenes detail, A, it's like 100 degrees and there's no AC. But B, I've been listening to a squirrel. The squirrel is the bane of my existence. He's trying to dig a hole into the side of my house, like right here. Like this squirrel, the whole like last like 9 months of work on like the book and everything. Like I've been like every hour I run out there and I like spray him with this like water mixed with like peppermint oil to try and get him to go away, and he just won't. Anyway,
is this
the squirrel
like
has been
is this a symbolic Elon Musk right now?
I swear to God, the squirrel is working for Elon. Like there's somehow.
So aside from his health, there were a few things that I thought were interesting, and I was just looking for it, and Sean and I talked about it a little bit. And it was towards the end of the call, and he mentioned that the Cybercab, he spent a lot of time talking about like, it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. And it was very similar sounding to back in the early days when we were, covering Model 3. And it was like preparing everyone for like the production hell, and he was talking about production hell before really like anything had happened. And I felt like there was a lot of that same hedging going on. And some of it clearly based in reality, right? Like if you're creating new products, you have to build out an entire supply chain. That is hard. We understand that. But he spent a lot of time talking about that. And then
about Optimus as well.
Yes, about Optimus, like anything to do with anything new. But specifically with the Cybercab, he mentioned something that I think we should dig in more. And it said, we need, because the vehicle has a new chassis, we need to accumulate driving data that is specific to the Cybercab before we can put a lot of them on the road. So I'm reading from my own transcript here. So he says, unlike Model 3 or Y and our other vehicles where we've got a lot of vehicles on the road, millions of vehicles on the road, we don't have that for Cybercab. So we actually have to accumulate miles with Cybercab that are retrofitted with steering wheels and acceleration, like brake pedals, that kind of thing, to calibrate to the Cybercab chassis. So to me, this is a big flag that says, Cybercab, apparently, do the miles that have been accumulated to train FSD, does that not overlap? And can it cross over to Cybercab? Because it sounds like maybe no, which I think would kind of blow up the entire argument that they've made for years, which is we're accumulating so many miles. But to be clear, it's not clear if that's the case or if, it just was a interesting, it left me with a lot of questions.
Yeah, we discussed this a bit before you joined back in. Because yeah, I mean, like basically everything about their strategy was refuted on this call, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the retrofit for earlier models is not just a software problem, it's not just a compute problem, but it is in fact a perception hardware problem. We have to replace all the cameras in the cars to get to the level of capability that we want to. That's a total walk back of every, and they dragged that out over 10 years since they said it's just a software problem. It's the our fleet is the strength, right? Like it is all the data we pull from the fleet that is going to make these cars not just self-driving, but generalizably self-driving. And then they absolutely couldn't provide a good answer on why they're going city by city. There were, as usual, kernels of truth sort of scattered in there, but like there were no actual answers, and it was just sort of a little kicking some dust in the air kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like if you were to take the comments about Cybertruck as completely black and white with no nuance, it sounds as if one of the reasons why they have to go to various other cities is because they're kind of starting from zero again, and they're mapping and accumulating miles city by city, and then that would suggest it's not generalizable. But we don't know that because, of course, there's no context, and so it's hard to parse exactly what they're trying to say. I think that a lot of times in these earnings calls, I do get some clarity on things, not always, but I was left with a lot more questions. I was left with a lot more questions than answers. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is, they sort of batted down the merger chatter.
Well, brought it up and then
was asked about it, but then the lawyer, was like, oh, the lawyer answered for them. So that was interesting, but also that if you were to imagine a Tesla SpaceX combo, which I do think is going to happen, I mean, the amount of time that they talked about Tesla as a chip maker was, I think, kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
I will say, like, with the Cybercab stuff, I feel like I run into this feeling a lot with the different companies that this guy runs, but it also is sort of applicable beyond them, because a lot of companies have sort of adopted this approach to how they work with the press or don't work with the press. But it's like, what an interesting set of questions that I would love to get answers to, that like a normal company would be willing to engage on. You know, if you were able to set aside some of the baggage for a moment of the promises that were made about flipping a switch and it's just a software problem, right? Many years ago. And even setting aside like the fleet is training, you know, for the inevitable robotaxi explosion. What you guys just described, this idea of like, we had to realize, I mean, Rivian is doing this to a certain extent, right? Like they were willing to say out loud in front of a room full of reporters and folks back in December, we fucking got it wrong. Like we were taking the wrong approach with how we were developing this stuff. We're starting over, you know, and they went into like a relative amount of detail as to like what went into that decision. And like, you know, there's always a level of guardedness when it comes to Rivian. Like RJ Scaringe is probably the most media trained of all of these CEOs. And so like, you know, you're not getting like the full debrief as to like all of that, but they were willing to talk about it. And to me, it's just like, it's such a shame that this has all become so adversarial for no good reason. Because it's like, I would love to hear these like, you know, sort of genius engineers that they claim to be hiring and they clearly attract to companies like Tesla, talk about some of the, you know, walls that they ran into. If what we hear being described is really what happened, this idea that now they have to kind of, maybe they created this kind of base layer that they can build on, and then they go to a new city and they ground truth it and do all this stuff. Like there's just so much there. It's, you know, it's similar to a lot of the things I think about when it comes to SpaceX too, where it's like, you're doing some really genuinely interesting things. And I would love to like engage on the level of like, the idea and the challenge and how you're attacking it in a way that you feel that nobody else has attacked it, whether that's true or not. And it's like, it's just that same thing that you run into here. It's like, you're never going to get that level of engagement from them. And the only place that Tesla will ever even sort of deign to make that kind of engagement with the public will be with like the friendliest person in the world hosting the friendliest podcast, or like, you know, the Boring Company just did like their first ever tour of like their whole facility or something, you know, a couple days ago, you know, hosted by one of these people who is just never going to ask a critical question whatsoever, you know, and that's all you ever get these days. And then, you know, maybe this is just me, you know, on the other side of 40 now, pining for the old days of journalism.
You're sounding cranky.
But like there's a reason for this, right? Which is that
yeah,
you know, what the valuation is based on is the Elon narrative and the Elon magic. And if God forbid an engineer talk in a real way about what's actually happening, because the chances are that at some point he contradicts the narrative. And then
which like we have actually a fair amount of evidence for, because like anytime we see communications, and this goes like cross topic, like I even think back to the COVID stuff in like early 2020 when all the factory shutdown drama was happening, but it applies to dealing with CPUC and dealing with DMV in California. It applies to so many things. I feel like you could make an outline over time of like all the times this has happened, where in those settings, when you see a public records request grab some emails from you know, whatever governing body, those people who engage with those folks are countering the narrative that is put out by the company and by Elon all the time. Like they are like, we have to tell you, you know, oh, it's FSD's level 2, you know, like, so there are places where they need to engage and differ from the narrative that, you know, sits over the whole company. But those are controlled environments.
When you're sending letters to the DMV, for example. No, it's a good, just really quick, a little book promotion, since that's actually what this is all about for me. For me is that you know, like one of the pieces of the book, one of the chapters basically is not really, it's sort of built around, right? So like the Walter Isaacson book comes out in 2023, and there's this episode in it where he's like, oh, like they're trying to get the Autopilot 1 to work on the 405 on Elon's commute. And what ultimately makes that happen is that like Sam Teller finds someone in CalDOT and they like repaint the lane lines at night. And like, that's how they're able to get it to work. And Elon says, okay, ship it. So we find this out in 2023. This is something Elon Musk voluntarily told Walter Isaacson. And to Isaacson's credit, he put it in the book. Like, it's a shitty book and it's full of lies, but that is, we can take that at face value. When you take, so you take that one piece of information. We're talking about something that happened in 2014, 15. Oh, geez. Okay. So a decade ago, basically. So a decade later, you get this one piece of data. Then when you take that piece of data and you go back and you look at everything Elon's saying, then you actually get the whole picture. But it takes 3 to 10 years for us to get that one little piece of data that then allows you to go back and reconstruct what's happening. And I think hopefully when people read the book, they understand like this is how you have to process. And this is why we need live streams like this, right? It's not like any other company where it's like they put up the numbers, they are what they are. There's not really that much to talk about with a lot of these companies, but with this company, this interplay between the narrative that Elon is in control of and the reality that he's not fully in control. He controls a lot of aspects of the reality, but he can't control it all. And how he interacts with the other people and just, anyway, buy the book. benbellabooks.com/Elon Take The Wheel. Kirsten, we should probably wrap this up. We're getting on 2 hours. But you haven't been on much. Anything else?
I mean, I think I kind of covered like the big stuff, which is, I did find, that while some of the flat figures like on the face seem to be like, and you've seen how some media plays that up or down, on the face of it may seem positive. Once you start peeling things back, it gets a little bit weaker. And then really that there's a lot of questions. I think that there's questions about, forget about the capital spend for a minute, but the amount of resources outside of capital spend, like just in terms of sheer people or time that it's going to take to get Cybercab up to speed, I think is going to be something that we should all be watching. Of course, the merger talk, and I do still expect that to happen. And the other thing that is like not anything new, but was just hit home for me again, and is talked about so much more openly. There was a time in which Elon didn't really openly talk about sharing resources with his other companies.
Yeah.
It'd be like a scoop that we found that out. I think we had one from Mark Harris back in the day about like the Boring Company and stuff like that. And now it's just openly shared, and it's really posited as or couched as a benefit. And, to me, like, of course, the line that shot in my head was like a Musk company supporting another Musk company. And when you start to like really do the math on that, it's like, what is propping up what,
Yeah. Well, I think that's yeah.
And no one's really completely, because it is such a tangled web. It'd be a great project for our special projects reporter over at TechCrunch to take on, which is really kind of untangling that web of various shared assets, which is going to become even harder and more opaque if these companies merge.
But for a brief moment, with them both being public, we actually have a sort of unique opportunity to get at least some insight into it. Okay, 2 more questions and then we'll be done. First question is, presumably we talked a lot about sort of the stagnant car business, not a lot of prospects for growth there. We've talked about the challenges on self-driving and all these other things. And the CapEx is ramping up and we're not seeing it come through. To me, this puts the focus more and more, and Sean, our conversation was drifting in this direction, on Elon's personality and his performances. And so I just want to make my own little observation about his performance today, and then kind of get your guys' sense of, like, because you've all watched a lot of these or listened to a lot of these calls. I feel like I've heard Elon be more high on these calls in the past, but like in a high energy way, and like, and not necessarily a lot more coherent, but like more energetic and more just like momentum to his speech. And like, I know he often struggles with momentum in his speech, but that seemed particularly poor today. Do you think his personality is getting more important, or is that kind of out the window because of the whole political thing having sort of blown out and sort of we're out the other side of it? And B, like, what did you think about his performance in this call, just from a human performance standpoint? I want to get both of you.
I'll be real quick. I would say we're already at peak performance. I mean, I think that the like peak performance in terms of talking about how his personality, or peak personality, I should say, I misspoke. That has been a big topic for years and years and years. I've seen every side of him in person when I used to be invited to these types of events, like, you know, the Model X and the Model S and the dual motor and the Tesla Energy, all those, Model 3. And so, and then oftentimes what we find out 6 months later, because of reporting, something was happening in the background. And so, you know, assuming that like maybe it's because he was sick, he was mumbly as usual. I think that the focus on his personality is hitting peak. Like, how much higher and how much focus can you go on this? The guy's, you know, basically on paper a trillionaire and world's richest man, and like is got his hands in everything politically. Like, I think that that's been unpacked a million times. I will say though that, putting the health thing aside, yeah, he did seem downbeat and he kept hammering the same points, but I've also seen him act like this before.
Okay. So it wasn't too out of the window.
No, I didn't feel like it was like anything super revealing. And that's just, I mean, because I've had the pleasure of covering Tesla since, you know, 2009. So
yeah. The last couple of years have been broadly lower energy and less novelty. And so I just, I don't think it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit peak personality, if you remember, like throwback to when he called out the analysts and called them, you know, for having stupid questions. I mean, that's when, you know, is
can't top summer of 2018, baby. Yeah, we'll never be, never have those thrills again. Yeah.
First of all, Twitter was a different place. Yes. Media was constantly commenting and really like live blogging. You know, earnings calls, they were considered very entertaining and exciting, and you didn't know what he was going to say. And people still tune in because of that. But it felt far more unpredictable. And now I think we're seeing maybe not the end of the story, certainly, but like it's more predictable in its chaos than it was back then.
Sean, thoughts on personality performance?
Listen, he's making the Odyssey all over again and making it historically accurate is a very challenging thing to do.
His mind is elsewhere.
He's just a little tired. Yeah, his mind is elsewhere.
Okay, all right.
I'll punt a little bit and I'll say this is where I'm really eager for the first SpaceX call.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks.
This is my last question. So
yeah,
let's go ahead.
Let me bridge it for you, because to me, the way I've been thinking about it is the gap between what the gap between what Tesla is doing and is about to, is near term about to do, and the promises that he's making, at least specifically tied to his pay package, not talking about amazing abundance and everything will be free and everybody will be a trillionaire, is much smaller in some ways than the gap between SpaceX's current business and the promises tied to his pay package there, right?
I mean, that's arguable. They're both pretty fucking
sure.
big.
I think so. I mean, I think so, but like, I think the idea of, to me, the reason I bring that up is like, will he be more animated by trying to sell people on, because the reason I believe that is like, here in Tesla, they can fall back on some stuff that is on the ground now, but is still pretty futuristic. Like robo-taxis are out there, et cetera, et cetera. SpaceX, when they get on that call, it's going to be like a telecom call. It's like subscribers are up and like we're thinking about, people will get a question about acquiring T-Mobile or whatever, right? And like, that's just a much more boring call. And, he clearly has some crazy ideas for SpaceX that he wants to promote. And so like, to me, that's the biggest kind of like bellwether, more so than Tesla. Cause I feel like with Tesla, it's easy for him to slip into like, he's done 1 million of these things and it seems genuinely hard to get him motivated to do some of the more animated
He's in a rut.
discussion that he's done in the past. I think so, a little bit. And like, listen, he knew it at one point, right? Like, how long ago was it that he said he wasn't going to do these anymore unless it was
that lasted 1 quarter though.
yeah, and it only lasted 1 quarter, and then he's come back and he's done every single one since. And tonight I was just like, my dude, take a night off if you're that sick. Like, you do not need to throw up on this earnings call.
Well,
but like, but you know, so that's why I'm kind of curious about the SpaceX call, because it's like, how is he going to keep people focused on the idea of orbital data centers or whatever, when like the real mechanics of that business are in some ways uglier than Tesla's right now. So like that's where my mind's at.
Yeah, and I will say, in his defense, I think if Elon had not shown up to the call, that would have created a way too much drama.
Sure,
and that
he's
would have been
painted
the
himself
storyline.
into
So
this corner.
He
Yeah,
has to show up.
Yeah.
So with SpaceX, I'm also really interested. I'm interested to see if Gwen Shotwell is leading the call. I expect her to, but I expect him to be, chiming in. If you'll notice today, he had a lot more people chiming in, and that might have been because he was, said he was ill. But it seems like the last couple of quarters, he used to never share the spotlight. It was always like, oh my gosh, he had someone speak. And we've seen that slowly change over the years, in part because I think that, he's got a lot of other projects, whether it's dissecting the Odyssey or, setting up Doge, other than just, running a single company. And then SpaceX, to your point, Sean, is not a straightforward company anymore. It was much more straightforward. We knew what it was. We could call it, like a, reusable rocket launch company that was, trying to, populate interplanetary species. We can't say that anymore. It has with XAI in there, it's so much more complicated. And so I expect that the earnings call is going to reflect that more so than ever before. And Tesla calls have started being like that too. I mean, 5 years ago, did I think that we were going to be talking about like terafabs and, making AI chips? Probably not.
Yeah. So I think I agree with both of you as always. I think I'm excited for SpaceX earnings next week because it's like a new genre. It's a new format. I think the problem with Tesla is that the narrative always moves faster than the reality. And they're at a particularly they're continuing to struggle to deliver on a reality on a narrative that's now 10 years old with the self-driving stuff. And then you got the Optimus on top of that, and it just it's the being stuck with the narrative. With SpaceX, he has the opportunity to kind of build some new narrative. I mean, obviously they had to get a lot of it out there for the IPO, so we know about space data centers, things like that. I'm curious if he seems reinvigorated, especially after a performance like this. Does he seem like he's enjoying it more because it's not simply a repetition of a ritual he's had to do every quarter for more than 10 years now? The flip side of that is he's going to feel a lot of heat to pump that stock, because I think it's clear now that Tesla is not really a pumpable stock in the way that it once was. They can keep it from bot, but it's a and this is Montana and I were discussing this sort of earlier. It's just on this flat. They have to work hard to keep it kind of flat. And so long term, so with SpaceX, it's both the motive and the opportunity to kind of get a little energy, a little new stuff, a little, and to really pump the stock. So, at this point, maybe I'm just holding out hope for dopamine that will never show up. But in any case, we will stream that as well. I think it's out Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
It's 2 weeks out.
Is it 2
it's
weeks out?
August 4th, yeah.
That is 2 weeks away. That's right.
I had to double check myself because there's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a busy 2 weeks coming up.
Well, you can tell I'm excited for it. And I'm definitely excited to hopefully have you guys back. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Not too much extra stress. I know you guys I get to sit here and have fun and laugh.
I know.
You guys are actually doing a job.
When you asked me, I said, hey man, we're going to be writing stories. So
yeah. Well, and hopefully next time it will not be 100 degrees or I will find a way to get air conditioning in this room from red the entire fucking time. But
you look at a little red face. Get some water.
Yep.
I will say, I think that the final note on the Tesla earnings is that there was a time where, and I think it shows how experienced reporters covering Tesla have become, is, 10, 12 years ago, we would have had 15 different breakout stories on all the things that he was planning on doing. And I think that it's far more measured now. And that long history, while he has delivered on some things, surely there isn't necessarily like this big jump to write about these claims or action anymore, or supposed actions anymore, because we want to see when it's going to be delivered.
We didn't even talk about the digital Optimus macro hard thing, which is a great example of that. That would have been like, right, if it were 2, 3, 4, 7 years ago, that would have been the thing. And now it's just like box. Anyway, we'll talk about that more later. Kirsten, you and I will be recording Autonocast tomorrow. So, or
not tomorrow,
day after tomorrow. So
no,
we'll be talking about some of this stuff more. In the meantime, thank you both so much. We'll see you back here for SpaceX. Thank you so much to the audience. We've had an incredible audience. Like, I haven't streamed in weeks, and we had over 100 concurrent viewers almost this entire time. You guys are amazing. I'm so glad that clearly people are getting something out of this. So we'll keep doing it, and we'll get more and better guests and
better guests.
Look forward to that. Yeah, you guys are just the warm-ups. No. We've got some actual people that people actually want to listen to, guys.
Okay, cool. Good luck with that.
All right. See you guys. Thanks so much. That's enough live streaming for today.
Okay.
Bye.